Good morning and welcome to the first meeting. I feel like I'm doing like an announcement for a football game almost. But anyway, welcome to the first meeting of the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources for the 2025-2026 interim. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Senator Cruz Crawford.
Here.
Senator Ellison.
Present.
Senator Pizzina. Assemblymember Considine.
Present.
Assemblymember DeLong.
Present.
Assemblymember Gurr.
Here.
Assemblymember Jackson. And Chair Anderson.
Present.
And I am present. I believe Senator Pizzina is also present. We just couldn't hear it through the
Yes,
microphone.
I did say present, but being in Vegas, I'm not right there. Thank you.
Totally understand. Thank you so much. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping announcements. Please remember to silence your phone and your laptops because my laptop went off earlier. The agenda for today is posted. Please note the agenda items may be taken out of order, combined, or postponed. Members of the public, if you would like to receive email notifications when meeting materials are posted on the committee's website, or webpage, you can sign up for that on the Nevada Legislative website. And finally, you might see some of us using laptops to follow the presentations. Please do not take that as a sign of disrespect. Committee members, our staff has provided binders of the meeting materials for the first meeting. We will not do so for the next meeting unless requested to do so. If you make the decision to do so, please make sure to ask for that with at least 2 days' notice. Public comment is actually the first thing we've got on our agenda today. So let's start with that. During interim meetings, we have 2 opportunities for public comment, once at the beginning and once at the end. Members of the public can also provide testimony in person, over the phone, by email, or by snail mail. Instructions are provided on the agenda. If you are testifying in person, please remember to sign in at the table by the door. Please remember to clearly state and spell your name before you begin, and limit your comment to 2 minutes. Staff will time each speaker during public comment to ensure everyone has a fair opportunity to speak. And although this might not be needed for today, ditto is always a wonderful comment to make if your comments have already been stated. If you wish to provide public comment over the phone, the number is 888-475-4499. The meeting ID for today is 881-1761-9045, and then you just need to press the pound key. Press the pound key again if you are asked for a participation ID. Let's start here in Carson City. If anyone would like to give public comment, come on up to the table. And while doing so, if you would like to provide public comment in Las Vegas, you can go on up to the table at this time as well. Is there anybody here in Carson who would like to provide public comment? Seeing no one making that mad dash, let's move on over to Las Vegas. You may begin when you are ready.
Good morning, Chair Anderson and members of the committee. My name is Jackie Spicer. I'm the coordinator with the Nevada Environmental Justice Coalition. Today, we're speaking in support of Assembly Bill 109, which we will be receiving a presentation on today. With Assembly Bill 109, we have the opportunity to protect one of the state's most precious resources and a lifeline to all life, our water. As the driest state in the nation, we have a duty to protect our water and not allow unchecked use to drain our groundwater. Water is becoming more and more scarce, and we must manage it wisely and fairly. AB 109 balances economic growth with sustainability. We understand how crucial geothermal and mineral resources are to the transition to a sustainable future, but not at the cost of draining our water table, and definitely not at the cost of our farmers, ranchers, and families who rely on groundwater to survive. Nevada has long been a national leader in innovative water management and conservation, and AB 109 continues that legacy. It supports key economic growth in a responsible manner without compromising the water security of our communities. In a state where every drop matters, we can't afford to drop this bill. Thank you for your time and dedication to the people of our state.
Thank you so much. Are there any further comments in Las Vegas? Seeing none, let's go to the phones. AVH, do we have anyone who wishes to make public comment?
Chair, the public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. Also, before we continue on with the agenda, I would like to very quickly do a thank you as well to our staff, whether they are here in Carson, in Las Vegas, or I guess the voices in the sky. You have done so much to help us prepare not only for this meeting, but also doing some research and other information. It is greatly appreciated. It is not during the 120-day session that you're here to help us. And I know I can only speak for myself, but it is incredibly important for us. So thank you so much for all of your professionalism and help during this time. With that, we're going to move on actually to item number 3, committee members and staff interjections. Let's start with our members in Las Vegas and then come back here to Carson City. When introducing yourself, if you could please remind us of the district you represent and a little bit about yourself. Vice Chair Cruz Crawford, would you like to begin?
Thank you so much, Chair Anderson. My name is Senator Cruz Crawford. I represent North Las Vegas. I am very excited to continue to learn more about the needs of Nevada so I can help support in the natural resource realm. I did chair my first Natural Resource Committee last session, and I'm excited to be of support. Thank you.
Great. Senator Pizzina, would you like to go next?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. My name is Julie Pizzina, and I represent Senate District 12 in the southern part of the valley, West Henderson, Green Valley Ranch, Silverado Ranch, Seven Hills. And I'm thrilled to be here back on the Interim Committee on Natural Resources. I had the opportunity to chair this committee in the last interim. I served as chair in the 23 session in the Senate, though in the 25 session, I chaired Commerce and Labor. And I'm excited to be back and, working on bills related to water was something I spent a whole lot of time doing. So I look forward to a lot more discussions here in the interim. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblymember Considine.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. My name is Venetia Considine. I have the honor of representing Assembly District 18, which is in Southeast Las Vegas, and a little bit of North Henderson. I've served on the Natural Resources Committee for 3 terms, and I'm happy to be here during the interim committee. Thanks.
Thank you. And ending up in the Las Vegas, I believe, Assemblymember Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. I represent Assembly District 6 as representing the historic West Side and older parts of North Las Vegas. I am happy to be here back in committee. I did not chair. I sat on this committee during the regular session, and I look forward to this interim.
Thank you so much. We'll now move up here in Carson, and as opposed to mentioning each of you individually, I'll just let Assemblymember DeLong start it and then move on over.
Thank you, Chair. Assemblyman Rich DeLong. I represent District 26 in Southwest Washoe County. I'm a geologist. It's been my professional career. Served on the Minerals Commission for 16 years, including as chair. The Minerals Commission oversees the Division of Minerals, which regulates geothermal development in the state. I've been on natural resources for 2 terms and have enjoyed it and look forward to this interim.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Bert Gurr. I represent District 33, which, as most of you in the room know, is about the eastern third of the state of Nevada. 5+ counties, well, not plus, 5 counties, 50,255 square miles. I think it's 1.49 persons per square mile in my district. I've sat on natural resources 2 sessions. My profession is I'm a real estate broker. I've been that way for almost 50 years. So, and I grew up in Elko. I know the backcountry pretty well, and I'm enthused to be on the interim committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had the pleasure this last session to work with two of my colleagues down in Las Vegas on two different committees, and they did a great job, a wonderful job in NetRAM and Commerce and Labor. I can't say anything. They were perfect. They did good. They let you ask questions, and it was perfect. My district's a little tiny one. It goes from the Idaho border, the Utah border, to the California border. So if you look at basically half the state, that's my district, and you'll see from Bert that you better buy a new truck every 2 years because you're going to need it. But anyway, I'm electrical contractor by trade. I'm into the commercial and residential properties. So I enjoyed that. I just sold one business, thank God, and anybody wants to buy some more, let me know. I did serve 12 years in NetRAM as a state assemblyman, and then I got to serve last session. So I enjoyed it. Last session I had 4 committees. I stayed here late at night just trying to read bills, so it was quite interesting last session. But it's good to be on NetRAM. It's very important to the state, and mostly in Bert and my districts in Washoe. So it's important. Whatever happens here is going to affect the state of Nevada. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I'll just end with myself. Natha Anderson, Assembly District 30, which is primarily Sparks, although I have a little bit of the Reno area as well. My real life, as I call it, or my other life, I am a high school civics and English teacher. And so my students actually are starting the legislative branch tomorrow, actually today when I'm not there. They're looking up some textbook stuff. But I think that's one of the reasons why I love having a civics and English teacher actually be on a natural resources committee. I have no science background, and yet that is the beauty of a citizens legislature. It's laws being discussed by people that are in the industry, such as some individuals, and some people that are not in the industry but are greatly aware and influenced of the importance of those items. So it's my honor to be the chair of it. I have served on natural resources since my freshman year. So that was 3 sessions ago, and I've had the opportunity to be on the interim committee now twice. So I'm looking forward to not only productive discussions, but also a continuation of what we've had over the last 3 sessions, including the interim, where it's not about the party, and it's also not about the region you come from. It's about looking at the resources we have as a state, protecting them, planning for the future, and also celebrating them. So I'd also like to take this moment to introduce our nonpartisan committee staff from the Legislative Council Bureau who will support us during the interim. Our committee policy analysis, and literally my right-hand person, Becky Peratt, and Jared McDonald. And then our committee counselors, Jeff Chronister, Aaron Sturdivant, and Danielle DeLapp. Our fiscal analysis is Daniel Miller, and our committee secretary is Jen Jacobson. Our members in Las Vegas will also be assisted by policy analysis, Destiny Cooper and Alberto Quintero. As I stated at the beginning, there's no way we could do this without so many LCB staff, but that also includes all of our staff, our AVH, our legislative police, our maintenance crews, just everyone, and also our retail therapists, known as the gift shop. So thank you so much. Thank you for keeping everything running smoothly and safely. So now let's move on to section number 4, where our committee policy analysis, Becky Peratt, will present the committee brief. If you would please proceed whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. For the record, Becky Peratt, Committee Policy Analyst with the Research Division of the Legislative Council Bureau. The committee brief provides information pertinent to the committee's work. This includes information on the committee's statutory authority and jurisdiction, changes to the committee with the passage of Senate Bill 226 last session, statistics on natural resources related legislation from the 2025 session, and committee staff contacts. You can also find links to legislative and executive branch audit reports on natural resources related state agencies and research division publications. To conclude, staff from the research division and other divisions are here to provide confidential, nonpartisan assistance to the committee and its members, and to provide any assistance in any way possible on any topic. My role is to provide policy and research assistance to help you make informed decisions on policies reviewed by this committee. As a reminder, as nonpartisan staff, I can neither advocate for nor oppose any recommendations that come before the committee. Please do not hesitate to reach out if I can be of any assistance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the information that you presented in the brief, especially on page 2, as I stated in my introduction. The statistics are incredibly interesting about how many bills we discussed, how many bills we actually passed. But of the bills that came out of the Assembly, all 27 of our bills had bipartisan support, which shows that we take the time to really discuss things, whether it's in the interim or outside the interim. And 23 of those 27 in the Assembly were with unanimous support. On the similarly on the Senate side, to back up what Senator Ellison was saying about how important it is to be able to work with each other. The Senate passed 34 of the bills, and 33 had bipartisan support, with 27 unanimous support. So again, I hope we can continue that trend of being able to discuss with each other rationally and come forward with decisions that are best for the entire state. All right. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none and feeling like I'm back in my classroom, let's move on to number 5 with cloud seeding across the state. The policy trends and program. We'll actually have first a presentation from the National Conference of State Legislators on cloud seeding policy trends in other states. And I believe they will be joining us via Zoom. AVH, are we ready to go?
Chair, this is Kim in broadcast. Are you waiting for Mr. Klein?
Thank you, Kim. I am. So thank you so much. Mr. Klein, please go ahead whenever you are ready.
Thank you, Chair. Is everyone able to hear me all right? Perfect. My name is Tom Klein, and I'm a policy associate in the Environment, Energy, Transportation program at the National Conference of State Legislatures. And I cover cloud seeding and geoengineering air quality issues here at NCSL. So I'm going to share my screen. And I believe y'all are able to see that. So thank you for having me. This presentation is going to talk about state policy trends and considerations behind some of those trends. I can speak minimally to the science behind cloud seeding and some of the concerns associated with it. So here is a map of the landscape, the policy landscape in state legislatures. The purple states are states with enacted legislation on geoengineering and cloud seeding. The orange states are states that have introduced legislation in the past and have not yet pre-filed or introduced legislation in this session, current session. And the yellow states are states with pending activity, so introduced legislation on the topic. And the gray states have not touched this topic yet. I will note this presentation was submitted on January 14th. And since January 14th, I did a quick check this morning. 6 additional states have introduced legislation on this topic. Those states are Georgia, Kansas, Mississippi, Rhode Island, West Virginia, and Virginia. So 8 states have enacted legislation. Those states are Colorado, Florida, New Mexico, Utah, Idaho, Nevada, Washington, and Wyoming. And of those 8 states, 7 states have passed legislation in support of cloud seeding, typically in the form of an appropriation. And 1 state, which is Florida, has passed a prohibition of cloud seeding and geoengineering activity in the state. 17 states, well, that's what it says in the presentation, but currently 23 states have currently pending legislation. And all of that pending legislation includes restrictions/prohibitions of geoengineering. And 11 states have introduced legislation in previous sessions without passing. 2 of those 11 states, as I mentioned earlier, Rhode Island and Virginia, have introduced legislation again in this session. Now, I believe I've lost the feed, but I hope you guys are still able to see me here. There we go. Did I freeze there for a second, or?
You were fine. We didn't even realize it
Excellent.
until you said something.
Thank you. I just didn't make sure I wasn't speaking to myself here. So here's another map here. These are the states that have enacted legislation. As I mentioned before, Florida is the state that has unsupportive legislation surrounding cloud seeding and geoengineering out of the states that have passed. You notice that the states that have passed are typically Western states with a bipartisan composition of legislature compositions. So here are some reasons why the states that have passed legislation on this have supported cloud seeding. It's typically related to water scarcity and drought risk. And that's why we're seeing it in Western states. So particularly states where precipitation variability directly affects water supply. So that, I know in Colorado, snowpack is very important because when the snow melts, we get the water in the rivers. So snowpack and watershed management is important to consider when it significantly contributes to downstream water availability. There's a perception of cloud seeding being an affordable option or low impact. I guess some just basics on cloud seeding. It's a special kind of plane that can be flown through already existing clouds that releases particles, specifically silver iodide, which increases precipitation in clouds. I'm sure there'll be a scientist that will be able to better explain this than I did, but it's seen as a low impact or incremental intervention, nothing super extraordinary. So it also is used for regional or sector-specific needs. So regionally, we're seeing it being enacted in states with drought. So states that support cloud seeding most commonly do so through the appropriations process, authorizations, or program continuation. It's rarely a standalone regulatory framework. And these measures typically direct funding or authority to existing agencies, water boards, research institutions such as universities, which I believe is action that was taken in Nevada in 2025 with an appropriation to the Desert Research Institute. So these are the states with pending legislation. As I mentioned earlier, this map should also include Georgia, Kansas, Mississippi, Rhode Island, West Virginia, and Virginia. And those states would also fit the trend that we are seeing with the introduced legislation. The introduced legislation we are seeing in states in 2026 are legislation that are unsupportive of cloud seeding, looking to prohibit cloud seeding. And geoengineering, weather modification. Sometimes cloud seeding is bunched with other weather modifications in state legislatures. So here are some reasons that states are opposing cloud seeding / geoengineering in some of their introduced legislation. We're seeing lawmakers are seeing heightened constituent concern about the topic, specifically when it comes to intentional atmospheric activity. There are concerns surrounding the chemicals that are involved in cloud seeding activity. There is public skepticism toward the government and private sector involvement with weather modification. Excuse me. And some policy overlap will, as I mentioned earlier, broadly include cloud seeding within weather modification or climate intervention debates. So it can lead to a wider prohibition that includes cloud seeding. Some believe that there is uncertainty about long-term environmental impacts associated with cloud seeding. And then a different angle to consider that some states have included in their legislation is a desire to avoid legal or liability exposure, especially where impacts are difficult to attribute or measure when you're dealing with waterways that go over state lines or different districts. So all of these cloud seeding bills that we're seeing introduced in the previous map here, it all goes around prohibition. I haven't seen legislation speaking to, cutting funds for research. It's mostly about outright prohibitions and often paired with criminal penalties, civil fines, or enforcement authority, rather than regulatory or permitting frameworks in these introduced legislation we're seeing, as well as with the Florida bill that was passed in 2023. So here are some examples of legislation. I separated them by supportive and unsupportive. So the three bills on top here are examples of legislation that are supportive towards cloud seeding. Two of them are with Idaho. So in 2020, that was one of the earlier bills passed in support of cloud seeding. It authorized the Department of Water Resources to develop, coordinate, and provide for weather modification projects. So essentially officially legalizing it. And in 2021, they added to the existing law, which authorized state funds to be used for cloud seeding in areas with low or insufficient water supplies. And the other bill I included in the examples of legislation supporting cloud seeding is a New Mexico bill that appropriated money to the University of New Mexico for cloud seeding programming and research. Now, here are some of the unsupportive bills below. In Missouri, these are not enacted bills. These are all pending. These were introduced this year. Missouri Bill 2388 creates the Clear Skies Act, which would prohibit geoengineering, cloud seeding, and other atmospheric interventions, and it would authorize the DNR to investigate violations, so includes criminal penalties. The Ohio and Tennessee bill are pretty similar. So in Ohio, it prohibits a person from engaging in solar radiation modification, cloud seeding, or sunlight reflection methods. And they named this one the Atmosphere Protection Act. And in Tennessee, HB 899, currently pending, it would make it a violation of the State Consumer Protection Act of 1977 for a weather-related company to conduct weather modification activities. And feel free to contact me if you would like more information. I have a full list of all the bills that have been introduced and enacted. And here is my contact information if you'd like some more information on this topic or others. And if there is time, I'm not sure how the agenda is slated. I'm happy to try and answer any questions, but if not, that's perfectly fine.
Thank you so much, Mr. Klein, for both the visuals, but then also just very quickly giving us some examples of both the positives and the negative legislation that has been, the supportive as well as the more, prohibiting legislation that has been presented in other states. If you're able to answer some questions, that'd be great. I believe I've got a few from the committee. Is that okay with you?
Yes,
Great.
Please.
Wonderful. We'll start off with Assemblymember DeLong.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. The term cloud seeding is a long-used term. I think pretty well understood what it means. To me, the term geoengineering is a new concept, new term, and I don't think well defined. Are you aware of any actually scientific analysis about what's included in the term geoengineering, excluding cloud seeding? And if there is, could you make that available to the committee?
Thank you for the question, Assemblyman. I believe geoengineering encompasses other forms of weather modification, such as solar radiation. I would like to provide you with that full list, and I'm happy to send that to you in an email, as well as a more clear definition of geoengineering, which I unfortunately do not have on the top of my head. But thank you for the question. I will make sure to provide that definition for you.
If you could send that to our committee analysis, and then that way everybody in the committee could have that, that'd be great. Do you have any?
Perfect. Thank you.
Further? Any further questions? Senator Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you tell me how many counties right now in the state of Nevada are doing cloud seeding?
Thank you for your question, Senator. Regarding the amount of counties in Nevada engaging in cloud seeding, I do not have that information. I have been tracking the state policy trends of cloud seeding in different legislatures. I do know that Nevada in 2025 passed Nevada Senate Bill 6, which was an appropriation to the Desert Research Institute, making an appropriation to the Research Institute, which is the system of higher education, to support the Nevada state clouding seeding programmings. I can also try and look into that for you and find information as to which counties in Nevada are operating in a cloud seeding capacity and provide that for you.
Yeah, because I think it'd be important for the state to know that the cloud seeding they're doing now and what impact it's having. So if you could get that, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I will make sure to do that for you.
And thank you. There is a possibility of the next presentation going into that information, Senator. So if so, you're okay. You might be off the hook. We don't know yet.
Thank you.
But I just looked at the individuals presenting next, and I believe they will be presenting that information. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you so much again for being able to participate with our meeting today. Greatly appreciate your presentation, and you'll more than likely get a few more follow-up questions.
Thank you, Chair. Feel free to email me. I'm happy to speak more on this question and others.
Thank you. All right, next we will actually have the presentation to agenda item 6 from the Desert Research Institution on the science of cloud seeding. And joining us is Frank McDonough, a research scientist in atmospheric science at DRI. As welcome, and please go ahead whenever you are ready. I don't believe your microphone's on yet. There you go.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Frank McDonough, and I am a research scientist at the Desert Research Institute, and I manage the cloud seeding program for the state of Nevada. And so I have a PowerPoint presentation I'd like to give, and be glad to answer any kinds of questions, including some of the ones that were introduced just in the previous talk. So as you know, representing the state, Nevada is the driest state in the U.S., and mountain snowfall during winter storms provide the critical water resources that the state relies on. Periodic drought and competing water needs are often greater than the amount of water that many basins can deliver, so there's a chronic shortage in many parts of the state of water. Cloud seeding is a safe, proven method to increase the efficiency of clouds to produce additional snowfall. And then this is an important topic that's come up in the last few years, is cloud seeding can also offset the detrimental effects of upwind air pollution. So upwind air pollution is actually putting particles into clouds. It's actually reducing cloud seeding. And these bills that were just talked about in the past that make no mention of industry's role in inadvertent cloud seeding. So what is cloud seeding? Well, it's a technology to improve a cloud's ability to produce meaningful precipitation. It's done by introducing an ice-forming dust into sub-freezing liquid water cloud layers, which are colder than 23 degrees Fahrenheit. The dust forms embryonic ice crystals, which will then grow quickly when the sub-freezing liquid water drops are present. And this is some physics that's a little bit complicated. I'm not going to get into the details, but that's basically the way it works. So we're looking for clouds with sub-freezing liquid water. We introduce embryonic ice into that, and we can grab onto those water drops and grow those baby ice crystals into snowflakes. And then that snow will end up falling to the ground as increased precipitation and subsequent runoff and provide water resources for the state. So how does cloud seeding work? Well, you can see if we go around this slide here, we go see number 1, a microscopic amount of silver iodide is released. And I'd like to, I don't know if you can see this, but this is enough cloud seeding material to make an acre-foot of water, which is a foot of water over a football field. So we're talking about this much, and it's a safe piece of dust. It's made of a rock called silver iodide, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So the silver iodide particles rise into the clouds, and then the particles enhance the cloud's ability to convert the sub-freezing liquid water drops into ice crystals. And then, as I said, these ice crystals will quickly grow big enough and fall out as snowflakes over the mountains, and then that will increase the snowpack and we get more runoff. So how's cloud seeding done? Well, in the state of Nevada program, the cloud seeding is entirely done from the ground. There's no aircraft used in this program whatsoever. Everything's from the ground. Here's a image of a cloud seeding generator out in the Ruby Mountains. And I'm not going to go through all the details of it, but basically you can see it sits on the ground. It's parked in a climatologically favored location to capture air as it moves towards the mountains. We introduce the dust particles into the clouds and they grow the snow, and then the snow falls out over the high peaks, and that adds to the snowpack. When is cloud seeding done? So cloud seeding is only done when winter storms are moving across the project areas and there's widespread low clouds. So we're looking at clouds below mountaintop. If there's any kind of high blue sky, nobody's cloud seeding that. They're cloud seeding when there's a huge overcast cloud deck with very low cloud bases. And as previously mentioned, cloud seeding cannot create clouds. It just can change what's in the clouds in terms of ice or water. So what is the cloud seeding dust made of? It's a naturally occurring inorganic molecule. Like I said, you can see this. We're the silver state, and this is silver iodide. It's a safe, naturally occurring rock. The reason it's used is because the molecular structure of silver iodide is very similar to ice. So it creates a surface for the water vapor and droplet molecules to line up on to create the initial crystalline freezing event that then can create snowflakes. This material remains a solid before, during, and after cloud seeding, and when it does come out of the sky, it does not disassociate. It remains an uncharged molecule, and it does not become bioavailable. So and I hear a lot of people over the years talking about their concerns with cloud seeding. This isn't anything new, and most of the material people present to me is studies based on silver ions. And a silver iodine is a piece of silver that's become disassociated from another molecule, and it carries a positive charge, and that positive charge allows it to be reactive to both biology and to plant life. And the cloud seeding material does not disassociate. It's not bioavailable. It's insoluble, so that no silver ions are created, and it does not add free silver to the environment. So all the concerns about silver are not related to the cloud seeding molecules used. Does cloud seeding work? It does work. It can increase snowfall by up to 15%, and several good studies have shown average stream flows of up to 8% increase. So it's putting down quite a bit of water, and it's works very well. It's been studied for decades, and it does work. And here's a listing of a few of the reports, which I'm not going to go over at the moment. So the next question is, are there safeguards built into cloud seeding? Obviously, if there's 50 feet of snow, nobody wants any more. And so we have a whole list of criteria that we operate under that protect the snowpack from getting excessive. And we keep our eye on the weather conditions, flood watches. And so we have suspension criteria that are built in. They include flood watches. We keep an eye on the snowpack, and if the snowpack exceeds an unacceptable number, we stop. If we have avalanche warnings that are going to impact roadways or communities, we shut down the program. And then, as I said, there's numerous environmental impact studies that show no negative impacts from cloud seeding. And these are going back 60, 70 years. So a big question we always get also is, does cloud seeding steal precipitation from other mountain areas? And the answer is no. And this is a complicated slide here, and I don't think I'll take the time to go through it. But the main take-home point is the amount of moisture that's removed from the air mass as it moves over a mountain range with cloud seeding is less than 1%. A fraction of a percent of the total moisture is removed from the storm system. So it has zero impact downwind of the area in terms of snowpack for the next, or the precipitation for the next mountain range over. So what isn't cloud seeding? So obviously there's a lot of confusion out there about what cloud seeding is and is not. And the EPA under President Trump has just issued a link through the EPA of what cloud seeding or what contrails are. So here's a big shot of contrails. People send me this picture all the time and tell me this is me doing this. And this is actually water vapor being created by the exhaust of jet aircraft. And so these jet aircrafts fly, they have a hydrogen-based fuel. The hydrogen-based fuel reacts with the atmospheric oxygen to create H2O. The H2O comes out the back of the aircraft, and it adds moisture to the upper atmosphere, and that extra moisture is enough to push the layer beyond its saturated moisture level and create these long-lived contrails. And so that's basically is not cloud seeding. It's just aircraft exhaust pollution, basically. And then what is geoengineering? So geoengineering is a research topic that's designed to study possible methods to offset the negative effects from CO2 emissions. And there's no active geoengineering going on. It's all research in computer models, and it's an idea. And unfortunately, there's been a sort of a kind of an overlap where people think these contrails are geoengineering, and they're actually not. And actually, there was an interesting study done right after the 9/11, where there was no aircraft flying except a couple of aircraft. And so they were able to actually measure the change in temperature of the Earth's surface with and without the condensation trails from the jets. And it actually turns out these contrails are a warming of the Earth. So these things are actually making the Earth even hotter than what's already being done. So these obviously are not geoengineering, and they're certainly not going to cool the Earth in any way. So anyway, that's just a little aside. So let's move on to the Nevada State Cloud Seeding Program. So the Nevada State Cloud Seeding Program's been going on for decades now. The state has invested in the program for many years, and there's currently $2.5 million in infrastructure that's owned by the state. It's already been built, it's operational, it's been installed in climatologically favored locations. And this infrastructure includes cloud seeding generators, weather stations, icing detectors, web cameras, communication systems, and then the equipment to do the field work in the winter as well. And these weather stations and web cameras are available to the Weather Service and any other weather forecasting groups to use, so it's also benefiting weather forecasting. We also enjoy strong support across the state. We have the support of the Southern Nevada Water Authority, Truckee Meadows Water Authority, Humboldt River Basin Water Authority, the Walker River Irrigation District, the Nye County Water District, and then from some of the other groups, the Save Red Rocks group has endorsed us. Lee Canyon Ski Area, the Nevada Gold Mines, and Nevada Farmers have all participated in our programs. So here's where the projects are located. So we operated nearly continuously under state funding from 1976 through 2009, and then after the big recession in 2009, the funding was cut due to lack of funds. These arrows, to the senator's question, these arrows show where cloud seeding is currently conducted. So we have a project in the Santa Rosa Mountains, Humboldt County. We have a project in the Ruby Mountains, which is Elko County. We have a project in the Spring Mountains, which is along the border of Nye and Clark County. And then we have a project in the Tahoe Truckee watershed, which partially is operated in California and then also in Washoe County. So that's where we're doing the cloud seeding at the moment. There's many other locations across the state that could benefit from this cloud seeding. Primarily, the Diamond Mountains have a serious water issue, and we've studied whether or not we could seed the Diamond Valley, the peaks above Diamond Valley, and it looks like we could. So hopefully we can maybe expand and help to offset some of the issues with that. So recently, we had a project funded by the state in 2017-18, and then in the 2023-24 and 24-25 projects were funded by the state, and then we're active again this winter as well. A fully operational program can produce 40,000 plus acre feet, some years quite a bit more, of additional snow water equivalent. And that's liquid water in the snowpack on the ground. And just for reference, Reno household uses 1/3 of an acre foot of water per year. So 40,000 acre feet is enough water for 120,000 houses. And it costs $10 an acre foot to produce. And you're paying probably almost 50 to 75 times that at your tap. So it's a really cheap way to get additional water, and it's pretty much the only way to get additional water without massive piping of water resources. So some of the other programs in other western states that the gentleman showed on the slide, Utah's spending $9.2 million this year on cloud seeding. They have, and then on top of that, they have additional funding from the Lower Colorado Basin, which is 6 Southern California water providers, Southern Nevada Water Authority, and the Central Arizona Project. And each of those the goal is to, for some of those projects, is to get water into the Great Salt Lake and then also to get runoff in the Colorado River. The state of Wyoming recently has spent $800,000 per year. And then on top of that, some additional funding from the lower basin. Idaho spending $4 million per year. And Colorado's putting in $700 per year from the state, and then there's other funding from the lower basin of the Colorado River as well. So here's some of the results from the 23-24 season. We were able to produce 56,000 acre feet. Like I said, that was enough water for 150,000 Nevada homes for a year, and the cost was $10.66 per acre foot. Last year was a little drier, so we didn't quite produce quite as much water, but we still produced over 40,000 acre feet last winter, and that ended up costing $14.75 per acre foot. And so far this year, it's been a kind of a strange winter so far. We're definitely below average in the Sierra. We're about 66% of normal. Out in eastern Nevada, we're more upwards of 85% or so. And down in the Spring Mountains, we're actually we're up well over 100% of normal. So anyway, we've had 17 seeded storm periods so far this winter. So just to summarize, cloud seeding has been used for decades in the western U.S. to enhance water supplies. It's conducted under real-time supervision and only within our defined weather parameters and our suspension criteria. And with that, I'd be glad to take any questions.
Great. Thank you so much. We do have a few questions. Before doing so, though, I am going to ask, right at the introduction, you said that there had been no discussion about businesses that might inadvertently do cloud seeding. Did I misunderstand that?
No. So basically, we have a growing body of evidence that suggests that air pollution of various sorts creates small aerosol particles. These aerosol particles get into the atmosphere, they go up into the clouds, and we're seeing downwind of large urban areas, we're seeing a decrease in the amount of precipitation. So if we look at the air crossing the California big cities and then moving into the Sierra, we're seeing a decrease in precipitation and a longer time to create precipitation because of this aerosol pollution from human activities. That includes industry, cars, there's all kinds of farm fields that are laying fallow over the winter. All those kind of things are adding dust into the atmosphere, and that dust changes how effectively clouds produce precipitation. And so I just wanted to point out that some of these bills that are being passed across the eastern U.S. that have no water issues whatsoever, they just don't want to see contrails in the sky. And Tennessee passed a bill about a year ago to try to ban the contrails. And as far as I know, those jet trails are still zooming right over Tennessee, and it hasn't done anything to stop the contrails. And so it's just sort of they're mismatching geoengineering with contrails, and so that's kind of a mixed up thing. And so but none of these bills address the results of what we call inadvertent cloud seeding, which is when human activities are changing the ability of clouds to produce precipitation.
Thank you so much for that clarification. And just to reiterate, it is not based upon one industry. It is based more upon the habits that we all have as humans, or?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I know that there's some other questions, and I might have more after that. Senator Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like the presentation a lot. It brings a lot of information. But I did have some questions. Most of all of our seeding that we have, like in the Ruby Mountains and stuff like this, these are all ground seeders. And I was kind of surprised that Diamond Valley hadn't been seeding, period. And that is a major issue down there, because they're buying up the farms or the ranches and closing them off because of the water issues. And so we're losing thousands and thousands of acres of alfalfa and whatever. So it seemed like to me that should have been a priority a long time ago. But most of the stuff we're talking about right now, where you're talking about nationwide, are you talking aerial or are you talking ground seeders?
Well, so through the chair to the senator, and for the record, my name's Frank McDonough. So basically, most of those bills are not specific. They just are banning any purposeful change to the atmosphere. So basically, they're banning the release of dust or aerosols to purposefully impact weather or climate. That's what those bills are saying. But the constituents' concerns are the contrails. They believe that the jet trails are active geoengineering operations, and they're not. I mean, so basically that's the kind of confusion. And then cloud seeding for precipitation enhancement, and like I said, that's only going to be done when you have low clouds, where you go out to the Ruby Mountains, you can't even see the mountains when we're cloud seeding. It's low overcast. You can't even see this blue sky. There's no blue sky when cloud seeding's being done. And so most of these bills are mostly just banning something that they're already not doing because, if you're east of the Mississippi River, you don't have water issues. Your water issues are flooding. It's not lack of water. So it's mostly just a bill that's getting rid of something that doesn't exist there anyway. And they don't have any experience with drought or, they've never seen a 4-year drought where no water makes it to Labrie Patch, so, it's easy to ban something when it's not an issue for your state. But in this state, the driest in the U.S., we should be, working to, try to improve our water resources. And like I said, this is a safe, very cheap overall for the amount of water it produces and effective way to add water resources to the Humboldt River. And as far as the Diamond Mountains, so I inherited a study over the Diamonds which showed that the ridge was too skinny to affect, the air goes up and over very quickly because as you know, that's a narrow mountain range. And so the previous research study, which was done about 20 years ago, showed that the aerosol, the cloud seeding material would go up and over very quickly. But I did a new one just over the last two winters, and it showed that we could actually impact them from the northwest side and actually have a much longer residence time over the peak. So I think we could expand the program into the area of the Diamond Mountains, and we'd like to. The problem is we sort of when we got the funding in 23, we had to refurbish all the existing programs, and we had existing equipment out in the Rubies and in this Tahoe area and down in the Spring Mountains. So we just spent our time kind of getting the program back on its legs over the last 2 years. And I think we will try to expand into the Diamonds, and hopefully next winter we can actually have a program that includes the Diamonds. So that's on our list of places to go, and that's the next place. Actually, that's our highest priority.
Clark County, we have an issue down there as far as the water table dropping quite a bit in the reservoir. And what is the mountain area up there? That's right outside of Las Vegas? Is it Charleston, or what is that called?
Yeah. For the record, Frank McDonough, through the chair to the senator, those mountains are the Spring Mountains. We do have an active program there. Those mountains are very porous, so basically the water the snow that goes on there percolates into the ground, and there's understanding groundwater recharge is highly complex, like how long it takes to get snow to percolate into a crack in the rock on the top of Mount Charleston. And Mount Charleston is the high peak in the Spring Mountains. And to get that water droplets that melt through that crack to come out in a groundwater reservoir is we don't know if that's, some of those springs are 1 year, some of them take 100 years, some of them that water melted and 1,000 years later it shows up in the spring. So we sort of need to really understand the percolation, and some of the extra snow we're putting down in the spring mountains now may show up in a spring in 50 years. We don't know. So, you know, and the Nye County Water District has a serious water issue as well. As you know, the state engineer was down there and they actually require 2 wells to be taken offline if you want to develop a property that you already own. And so we are trying to do a project targeting the west side of the Spring Mountains, especially to see what the recharge in the Pahrump Aquifer looks like. And so we're on the 4th year of that study right now. And so hopefully we get some insight on how well the project can recharge groundwater. But it's a highly complex question. But more water is always better.
Thank you. Next up, we'll go to Clark County, Assemblymember Considine.
Thank you, Chair. I think my question has somewhat been answered. My question was that in your program results, you're showing snow water equivalent precipitation. And my question was, when you're saying that 40,674 acre feet of water, that is not measurable as far as seepage through a snowpack all the way into the aquifers, the recharges. That's just what's sort of landing in the snow. So the generation that you're saying acre feet of water is not water that is potentially currently or foreseeable future completely going to be usable. That's just where it lands, and it still needs to go through the seepage and percolation. So we don't have that final number yet. Did I understand what you were saying correctly?
So for the record, Frank McDonough to the chairperson, to the assembly member, that is
just
correct.
Go direct.
That is correct. Yeah, it's basically snow on the ground. And like I said, the recharge challenge is a big one, and even the runoff it's exceedingly complicated. If that snow falls on dry ground versus a wet ground, the runoff's different. But like I said, there has been a really good study done during a 50-year project by Southern California Edison over their hydro project in the Central Sierra, and they were regularly seeing 8% more water coming down the river during the cloud seeding operation. So that was a really robust study with decades of research behind it. So that's probably the best study. We have some interesting results from the Humboldt River. We have the North Fork of the Humboldt comes down from an unseeded area along the Idaho border of the Jarbidge Mountains, and then the South Fork of the Humboldt comes out of the Rubies. And so we can actually compare the flow of the South Fork to the North Fork during the seeded and unseeded years, and we regularly see almost a 10% more water in the South Fork during the seeded years. So we feel pretty confident that the runoff, although it's certainly not all the snow that's being put on the ground, a decent amount of that does come down as additional water. But like I said, it's a highly complex process, getting the snow to be usable water resources.
Did you have a follow-up? Oh, great. Thank you so much. Next up, we'll go up with Assemblymember Gurr.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've danced around the answer to my question pretty closely, but when you're looking at the difference between a normal storm and when it's cloud seeded, you can tell the difference between the snow just by snow depths? You can tell that storm was only going to put down 10 inches of snow and you seeded it and it put down 20. How do you get to that point?
Well, so basically, through the chairperson assembly, basically you look at what's in those clouds. So the clouds, we have weather models that can tell us what's in the clouds. It uses observational information, including satellite and radar and observational networks, and then we can put all that into a weather model, and then we can run all the physics we understand to calculate how much liquid water's in those clouds. And then we can also calculate how well the cloud seeding material would go from our ground-based equipment into those clouds. And then based on how much water there is and the temperature, we've done studies that show how quickly and basically these clouds with water have very tiny, these drops are very, very tiny. They don't fall out, they just float with the cloud. Whereas if you can get all these drops onto one snowflake, they come down. So that's really what the goal is, to take all these tiny drops and get them onto a single snowflake, and then have that snowflake bring that water to the ground. And like I previously said, those drop numbers seem to be increasing based on upstream pollution. But anyway, long story short is we can calculate, based on the amount of liquid water in the cloud, how long our aerosols are in the clouds, how much growth we're going to get onto our snowflakes. And so it's more on the order of about, a 10-inch snowstorm would be an 11-inch snowstorm if the clouds with liquid water are present. So we have meteorologists looking at all our project areas 24/7 pretty much. And if they see the evidence the cloud liquid water layer in the temperature range where cloud seeding could be done are there, then they're going to turn on these generators and then so somewhere like the Spring Mountains, it's amazing how much water comes through those mountains in the clouds versus, somewhere up in the Jar-Bidge where it's much colder and the amount of water is much less, but the storms last for 3 times as long. So it's kind of like I said, we're watching the weather. We've studied the clouds extensively, and we know how effectively the ice will pull the water out. And so we can calculate how much water we think we're creating based on the cloud seeding and the atmospheric conditions that are present. But we don't have a great way to measure it. We do, when we do validation, we use these SNOTEL sites, which are in the mountains, and we try to do what we call target control for a snow site that is being seeded versus not being seeded, and try to do a statistical analysis of that. And usually that turns out pretty positive. Like up in the Santa Rosa Mountains, we did one which I feel is a pretty robust one. And we're seeing upwards of 30% more snow over the 3 or 4 years that we've run that project. So, and that's a great mountain range to do the work, the Santa Rosa, because so that's a great research place for us to study cloud seeding. And the results show on the order of and now obviously some storms are not seedable. If there's no water in those clouds, if it's all ice and snow, then we can't do anything with those. We just let them go. But if that water layer's there, we're going to seed it, and we can add the 10%. So that 40,000 acre feet is coming from a post-analysis of all the times we seeded compared to all the weather conditions that were present when we did the seeding.
So it's a very complicated process.
Okay.
But I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblymember DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think you provided a lot of clarity on the issue on what cloud seeding really is and what geoengineering at this point really isn't. Because there is a lot of discussion about geoengineering, and the contrails are all these companies spraying all these chemicals, and which is, from my perspective, not true. And really good presentation on the cloud seeding. I actually have a couple of questions. One is, why would you use aerial versus ground-based cloud seeding?
So, okay, I'll just answer if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, ground-based, first of all, you don't have to fly in clouds. These water drop clouds, sub-freezing water drops, are actually icing clouds as well. So aircraft going in here are going to ice up. And, we're flying during winter storms at low altitudes with heavy turbulence and strong winds and stuff. So it's a little bit, I'm not saying it's not doable, but most of the time you do it from the ground because it's cheaper, number one. Number two is that you can cloud seed continuously for however long you want without having to send the aircraft back to refuel and go up in the clouds. The reason aircraft would be beneficial is if a warmer storm comes in. So we can't really effectively cloud seed until the temperatures at 10,000 feet are colder than 23 Fahrenheit. And so some storms are significantly warmer than that, where that 23 Fahrenheit layers up at 13,000 feet. And so our ground-based equipment can't reach that high of an altitude. And like I said, we're just not doing aircraft. So, I think aircraft would be really interesting is actually to do validation, to go fly and intercept the cloud seeding materials and to help beef up. But it is done. I mean, there's projects in other places that do use aircraft. I think some California projects do, but yeah, we don't do anything with aircraft.
All right. And then one follow-up question, if I may. How is the silver iodized actually aerosolized to get up into the atmosphere?
It's dissolved in a acetone solution, and then we burn the acetone solution, and the precipitate is a solid piece of silver iodide that's about 100 nanometers in size, and that's the perfect size to create an ice nucleus. So that's been engineered. And like I said, this has been going on for 70 years now. And DRI is like the state of Nevada actually is a pioneer of this technology. And Desert Research Institute actually still one of the world-renowned cloud seeding locations. So this is something that the state's one of the global leaders in as well.
Thank you very much. I think this is a great program. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. One last question from me. Appreciate everything with the water, appreciate all the science behind it. Incredibly important. Want to make sure that that's very clear. But natural resources is not just about water, it's also about other areas in our state. Has there been any sort of discussion and or studies around the migratory patterns and whether or not this is also impacting the animal habitats? Because that has been an item that is brought up to me by critics.
Sure. Okay. So basically, like I said, this technology was accidentally discovered in the late 1940s, and they instantly realized that the silver iodide was the perfect molecule to use, and that was probably in the late 1940s. And by the 1950s, there were operations, being in the West, you see a way to make water and everybody jumps on it. And so as early as 1950s. And so there's been studies on silver iodide in the environment since the 1950s. There's like dozens of studies. And every one of them comes to the same conclusion that the silver iodide is not soluble in water. So it's like a piece of sand. If you drop a piece of sand into a glass of water and you can stir it for a month, and you're never going to get that piece of sand to dissolve in that water. And so when plants take up the water, they're not taking up the particles. And so the particles tend to just stay in the dirt. And then there was a really good study done in the late 1990s. And so the McCollum River, which is just south of Highway 88, there's this area called Blue Lakes, and Blue Lakes is the headwaters of a project that the PG&E has been seeding since the 1960s. So 50, 60 years of continuous cloud seeding. So they went up there and they pulled out sediments from the bottom of the lake. They pulled out sediments from around the lake and from soils around the area. And then they compared the measurements of silver to the measurements of silver over some lakes in Yosemite, which has never been seeded, and there's no difference in the background silver. So there's no evidence that silver is accumulating in the environment, even after 60 years, and there's no reason it should be accumulating. And then the other results all say that the lack of solubility of the cloud seeding materials actually leads to no biological impact from the cloud seeding. As like I said, and the amount going up over the whole winter is probably a few pounds total of this stuff.
I'm going to cut you off because I think you might have misunderstood what the question was really asking.
Okay.
Thank you, though, for going into the agriculture area. This has more to do with the migratory patterns of animals.
Okay.
Is there a change that has been studied as to whether or not animal migration has changed because of the water coming down at different time frames? That has been an item that has been brought up as a concern to me, and then I think from other legislators, This has also been sent to us.
Okay.
Has there been any study about the impact on cloud seeding when it comes to animal migratory patterns?
Okay, animal migratory pattern. Okay. I do not know if that's been, but I think that in terms of, I mean, these are existing watersheds that, one winter there's a bunch of water comes down from the rubies, the next winter hardly any comes down. So the cloud seeding, all the cloud seeding is really going to do is give you 10% more runoff year to year. But if it's like a horrible winter, there's still going to be limited water. And if it's a big winter, we're going to stop seeding once the snowpack exceeds it. So it's not going to really have any impact on the changes. It might help, keep a pond in a certain basin active for a few extra weeks. So if the birds are coming through and they need a resting spot, and without the cloud seeding, that resting spot might already be dry, where they could come in and maybe take a rest in a wetland area that's not totally dry yet. So that's kind of the kind of impact. And I think in terms of, ranching and things like that, I think there's more greenery in the grazing areas for everybody that's participating in grazing. And then trees as well probably benefit somewhat from the extra water.
Great. Thank you so much. And I recognize the fact that it was about the water first, but that has been something brought up. So thank you so much for your presentation. I'm sure we'll be having more discussions in the future. Thank you. Before we move on to our next presentation, I do want to make a really quick announcement. I think it's very important for us to have as many discussions as we can, ask the questions. So I am planning at this time possibly to break for lunch at 12:30 if we need it. If we're able to, we will not be breaking for lunch. But at 12:30, we will possibly be breaking for a 30-minute lunch break. So that way everybody knows to plan for it, and everybody just kind of has an idea. So now we will move on to the presentation on the science of geothermal, number 7 on our agenda. Our first presentation is from the Nevada Bureau of Mines and Geology, and we have Dr. Carrie Lindsay joining us to discuss the science of geothermal. Please begin whenever you are ready, and thank you for being here. Go Pack, just saying. Not that we're playing UNLV Friday, but go Pack.
Okay. Thank you. Let me get my slides pulled up. Good morning. My name is Carrie Lindsay, Carylyndsey. I am research faculty at the Great Basin Center for Geothermal Energy at the University of Nevada, Reno. And today, thank you for inviting me down. Today, I'm just going to share with you kind of a high level of the geothermal science. I'll go through it pretty quick because I want you guys to ask as many questions as you would like. So first off, who are we? We're a small but mighty group. We have 3 full-time faculty that are dedicated to geothermal research, about to be 4 when we graduate our next PhD student in the summer who's going to stay with us because what we do is really fun, fascinating work. We were created in the early 2000s. You can actually see a change in the geothermal output in Nevada that is consistent with our work, so we do have some impact on what's going on in the state. We're part of the Nevada Bureau of Mines and Geology, so we actually are your state geologic survey. We are a department of the Mackey schools at the College of Science of UNR, but we are also a state agency. And we're a world-renowned research center in geothermal space. So first off, what is geothermal energy? I think that we all have a pretty good idea. The deeper we go, the hotter the earth gets. So technically that is geothermal energy. All you need is some heat source, some way for a fluid to get to it that can bring that heat source back to the surface so that we can utilize that for various reasons, including generating electricity. These are really basic schematics that I'm going to show today. And of course, nature doesn't really work that way, but so that we can all understand where we're at. So why Nevada, and why is Nevada so important for geothermal? So there are a few things. One, Nevada is completely encompassed by the Great Basin region, which is part of the Basin and Range, which is an extensional area. So for those of you who are not geologists, Nevada is being stretched all the time. So Nevada is actually the fastest growing state in the United States, and we get about a football field a year. I don't know who's paying taxes on that or whose property goes up for that, but somebody's getting an extra football a year, and if we're cloud seeding that, then I guess that's more people that we're getting water for. But because of this, the heat is actually a little closer to the surface in Nevada than it is in other parts of the country. We also have the Walker Lane, which is on the western border of the Basin and Range of the Great Basin, so we're all familiar with the San Andreas, right? And that accommodates all this movement that's happening on the western coast. Well, it actually doesn't accommodate all of that. Some of that motion is accommodated in the Walker Lane, which was an extensional area of faulting. So the Ridgefield earthquake a few years ago, that's along that Walker Lane area. So that's a high heat flow area. But all this to say, Nevada's really structurally complex. And so we need heat that's close to the surface, and we need really complex geology, and we have that here. Most of the geothermal systems are predominantly amagmatic, so a lot of people, when they think about geothermal, they think about volcanoes. That is not the case here. We just have heat that's closer to the surface. And so this is just a schematic of what's happening. So as Nevada gets stretched, these blocks, these grabens, they drop down, so that's the basins, right? And then we have these horsts that are uplifted, and that's the ranges that you see. So if you drive across Nevada, you see it, a range, a basin, a range, a basin, a range, a basin. So along these range fronts, we are closer to that heat, and so that heat can find a way to get closer to the surface to make it economically available for production. Why geothermal? I don't get into the why geothermal a lot. I'm a scientist, and I do this strictly for the science, but I like this plot that I put together. Geothermal, it's renewable, it's base load, it's always on, it's low emissions. It's a good answer if you got it, and we got it. So types of geothermal, a lot of what you're going to hear in Nevada is about generating electricity. We have 20 some odd power plants here in Nevada that generate electricity. But geothermal is experiencing revival, and that's not just about generating electricity anymore. It's about direct use applications for geothermal, so heating buildings, melting sidewalks, industrial demands, so thermal energy. In the United States, we combust natural gas to create heat for heating processes that we need, when we already have heat that we could use directly in Nevada and in other places. Ground source heat pumps, which in my opinion should be the standard for new construction. In my mind, that's more of an energy efficiency tool than a geothermal tool, because you don't need anomalous heat to do a ground source heat pump. You can do that anywhere in the country, and so for new builds, that makes a lot of sense. The conventional geothermal, which is what we have in Nevada, we're generating electricity from that, conventional hydrothermal systems, hybrid co-located systems, which we also have in Nevada. So you might have a geothermal power plant that also has solar next to it, or a geothermal power plant that might have storage next to it. And then the big topic right now is next generation geothermal. So there's been a lot of knowledge and technology transfer from the oil and gas industry over the last 5 years, and that's really advanced what we call next generation geothermal. And I'll share a little bit about each of those. So direct use, our favorite one in Nevada is directly recreating in these hot springs. So that's a use that we shouldn't forget. It's an important one. We should all set aside some time to have fun. It's not all about work. We can also use that geothermal heat directly. We can do greenhouses. In Oregon, they do tilapia farming, lots of different uses. I think that the limit here is our creativity, right? Geothermal heat pumps, I mentioned, big fan of those. Took me a long time to start calling these geothermal because, again, you don't need anything anomalous. It's just a heat pump. And then conventional geothermal, again, this schematic is really basic, but this is a typical Great Basin system. You've got some heat at an economic depth. You've got some fluid. I'll go back and forth between calling it a brine, a fluid, a water. I'll get into the specifics of that in a minute, but for now, fluid. You got some fluid that at some point in time managed to recharge one of these systems. It may not be recent times, but it's happened. And then you want some permeability for this fluid to make its way back up to the surface. So again, Nevada is a very seismically active state, and so that's also good for geothermal. because it keeps us shaking a little bit and keeps these permeable pathways from getting all clogged up. And here's an enhanced geothermal system. I'll flip back. Regular, enhanced. So what's missing here? We don't have that permeability, right? And we don't have that fluid, but we do have heat at some economic depth. So the objective of enhanced geothermal system is to tap into that and to create basically a geothermal reservoir. So you're drilling at some depth, you're fracturing hot, dry rock, and then you're introducing a brine to that so that you can mine the heat. And the objective is you bring that fluid back to the surface, and you've essentially created a geothermal power plant. You condense, you inject that fluid back into the surface, and that's your working fluid that you cycle through. If you've heard about work by companies like Fervo in Nevada and Utah, this is what Fervo is doing. Another one that's, I would say, probably a little bit further back on the advancement level. It's probably not as much money has been spent on it as EGS just yet, but I do think a really interesting one is advanced geothermal systems. So these are completely closed loop. Your fluid actually never goes out into the rock. It never goes out into the reservoir. The fluid essentially goes through this piping system, and it mines heat out of the subsurface, and then it comes back up to the surface. And again, you've got your geothermal power plant at the top. So this is still, I think, in the testing phase, but we'll see if they get the thermodynamics to work. I mean, who doesn't like that when your fluid never comes in contact with the rock source, right? And the question is, why choose? And maybe in Nevada we don't have to choose. It's possible that we can use all of these resources. Not every location is great for conventional. Not every location is going to be great for EGS. But I think there are locations that we could deploy any and all of these across the state of Nevada. And that's a lot of the work that we do is assessing the locations as to where this stuff might be available. I guess I should say, as your State Geologic Survey, I think one of our responsibilities is and should be reporting back to you guys on what the potential is for this natural resource that we have in Nevada, just like the U.S. Geologic Survey does nationally, right? And then this is something, so that's just kind of a general idea of what geothermal is and what it looks like. And this is a slide that I put together because the conversations today are about water. And as all Nevadans, I care a lot about water. And I don't come from a state that cares a lot about water. I'm from Mississippi. I'm from one of those out east where we have plenty of water and we don't worry about it. So water really stresses me out here. But as I mentioned, there's a little bit of difference in the fluids that we're talking about. And so I put this slide together because I really want us to think about what we're talking about when we're talking about a geothermal brine or geothermal fluid. This is not groundwater. It may be recharged in the same sense that typical potable groundwater is. As it comes from rain, it comes from snowmelt, it percolates back down into the surface. This has another step that happens to it. It gets superheated, and that heat makes this water much more reactive to the rock that it is in. So if you've got seawater on one side, which I think we all understand is not drinking water, and we understand why it's not drinking water, and we understand the complications of making that drinking water, take that and heat it up and throw it in some rocks. And now you've got a geothermal brine. And that's why I hesitate to call this water. It's a geothermal brine. Is it mostly water? Yes, it is mostly water, as we are also mostly water. But that does not make this water. In order for us to treat this water or use this water ever to the point that this would be potable water would cost us more water and energy than we would get from treating this fluid. So while I do think we need to keep these geothermal fluids and groundwater, they do interact with each other. The subsurface of Nevada is not a closed box. These waters mix with each other all the time, but they are drastically different in their source, in their composition. Geothermal brine has lots of dissolved minerals in it. It's very salty. It's very briny. It's one of the reasons why we don't really want to mess with it, and we keep everything closed loop. If I'm not mistaken, all the power plants in Nevada are now closed loop binary type systems. We don't want, except for one. Okay. So I just wanted to share this with you guys. Just so that we kind of understand where we're talking about when we're talking about these fluids and the differences in them. Hot springs and geothermal, this is another big topic. Can we have hot springs and can we have geothermal beside them? Yes, absolutely we can. Yes, absolutely we do. We have that in South Reno. We have a power plant, and right across the street we have a hot springs resort. So these two things can exist in one location. That's not easy to model. It's not easy to guarantee, and I would say we probably can't guarantee it. But there are a lot of really smart geologists and scientists and engineers who work on the subsurface. And before companies go in and drill in these locations, they want to make sure that that's not going to happen either, because it's not good for their bottom line. And then this is the exciting thing about Nevada. Most of the systems that we're going to be developing from now on in Nevada are hidden geothermal systems. So these are systems that have no surface expression. They don't have an active hot spring at the surface, or they're not actively depositing geothermal minerals at the surface. There's no fume rolls. There's no steaming vents. Why is that? Well, these systems, for whatever reason, evolved this way. There may be some strata on the top that just makes it impermeable for that fluid or a hot spring to exist at the surface. It moves off laterally. The cool thing about developing these systems is if these systems are developed, we're not worried about messing up anybody's hot spring because it doesn't exist to begin with. So that's a really cool thing. We think in our reporting that up to 70% of the systems in Nevada are going to be these conventional hidden geothermal systems. So I think that's good news for everybody. I showed a slide early in the beginning that shows geothermal. It's an NREL slide of all the different geothermal potential here. This just shows all the different types of geothermal use. And I'll show you my last slide because everybody always gets a kick out of it. I didn't like this slide. I thought this slide was very austere and doesn't really represent what geothermal looks like in the wild. So here I fixed it. We still have trees. We still have the mountains. We still have the birds. We can have all this. And we just have to be responsible about how we do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And are you able for a few questions?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any questions here in Carson? I'm not surprised. I'm going to start at the other end this time. Assemblymember DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. Just one quick, simple question. I think on the closed-loop enhanced geothermal systems, has most of that research been with a water working fluid, or have they been looking at isopentane or other more volatile working fluids?
So one of the companies that's doing research in this area has actually reached out to us, and they are trying. Of course, they looked at the isopentane and isobutane, which are standard secondary working fluids in geothermal systems. Many of them are trying to find a more water-based solution, but thermodynamics. Yes, thank you.
You can go down to Vegas, Assemblymember Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to get a basic idea of how big the drilling is, like how far down is the drilling to perform this geothermal energy?
Sure. So that's variable across the state. I'm sorry, Carrie Lindsay. It's variable across the state, but most conventional systems in Nevada exist between 1 and 3 kilometers. So that's pretty shallow for Nevada. There is a lot of exploration that's drilling deeper than that to get to deeper, hotter systems.
Did you have a follow-up, Assemblymember?
No, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Senator Ellison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've had a lot of geothermal in our areas for a long, long time. And I remember when they first put in the geothermal in all the schools, the jail, the city hall, county, we heated them buildings for years with geothermal. Mm-hmm. So when they did Biwawi, I finally kept saying, God, you're missing the boat out there. And now they got the power plant out there. And I don't know if that's on full line yet or not. Is that? I know they were expanding. Is it on full line now as the geothermal in Biwawi?
Yes, they are producing.
Okay. Thank you.
We're doing some work right across the ridge there. We've got so we have a $15 million DOE grant that we're currently working on, and we're out in that area too.
Well, I think geothermal in Nevada is going to be number one because there's so much, and it doesn't go down, it doesn't go up. It's there continuously. So yes. It's a good thing to do when we can heat our schools and air condition our schools just on something that's natural.
That's there already. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I do have a quick question. You had mentioned that there were some people or some companies doing exploration. Is there still a need to do some permitting or application in the county for those explorations? And if so, how long does that usually take from your experience, understanding that you're taking this from the education point of view, so you might not have that information?
My experience is limited, but we actually, because our projects go all the way to temperature gradient drilling, then we do have some experience with exploratory drilling permits. So we're dual permit state if we're on BLM land, so we get permits through the Bureau of Land Management, different regional offices, and then we also get a permit from the Nevada Division of Minerals. I will say Nevada Division of Minerals is very quick to turn those around. We can usually get permits for drilling temperature gradient wells within 30 days. From NDOM, it can take months to years from BLM. We had one that we submitted 3 years ago that was lost. We never heard back from it. So it can be a tedious process. And we're an educational institution. We're an institution of higher education. We're not actually going to produce anything. We're not producing any fluids. We're only drilling temperature gradient wells.
Thank you, and I really do appreciate your presentation. I'm sure that we will be in contact in the future on some other things. The discussion about BLM taking a little bit more time to get back to any sort of item has been of concern for more than a few years. Thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you.
Nice
It's
job.
a pleasure.
Thank you. All right. Oh, and I'm sorry, Vegas, I forgot to double check. Were there any other questions? Seeing nobody rushing to the microphone, I'm going to think no. All right, let's move on to number 8. Production and permitting update, Nevada's mining, geothermal, and the dissolved mineral resource exploration program. I believe we've got our administrator, Robert Galleri, on production and permitting. And if you wanted to also bring up some of those difficulties that were brought up right at the end, that would be wonderful, but also understand that that was not a question asked of you earlier before the presentation items were asked of you. Whenever you are ready.
There we go. Okay, again, Rob Galleri for the record. Thank you for having us today. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about mining and geothermal. With the initial request of the presentation, it was mining and geothermal and dissolved mineral resources, which I understand there is a time on this, so I'm going to try to move through some of them a little quicker than others. On that, and I will address quite a bit of the questions that were just raised to Dr. Carey, so we could go through those as they come up. Okay, so in my presentation, I'm going to highlight mining over the last production statistics that we have, which is year 2024. Then I'll cover geothermal, dissolved mineral resource exploration, and then the mining law nexus between all of those. So since 1978, you can see this graph shows the mineral production value by commodity. Obviously, the largest one is gold, and we're still seeing that increase with 2024 actually being the second highest year ever for value of minerals produced in the state of Nevada. That is obviously due to significant increase in gold and silver price, as well as a little bit of copper in there too. But what you do see as well, it's hard to see, but you can see that there has been an increase in geothermal energy production as well. With that though, you will see a big difference in the next graph of, you see the volume of value of minerals produced, but actual gold production in the state of Nevada has been on a steady decline since the late 1990s. This is mainly due to a lot of different things. A lot of the 1990s was near surface oxide ore, open pit, a lot easier to get to, a lot more volume being done at a higher grade. We're seeing a transition to a more of an underground sulfide type ore, which is a lot more expensive to mine out as well as process. But what you do see is a very steep change in the price of gold. And this was submitted, 3 weeks ago for this presentation. And the gold price has already gone over $5,000. It actually went up $200 there, close to it. It's mind-boggling what is happening with that. But you can see there's been a drastic decrease in actual volume of minerals produced year over year. And we actually estimate that it will go down slightly more again in the year 2025. But just for comparison, in 2024, the average gold price was $2,383 per ounce. 2025 was $32.50 roughly, and we're seeing that to increase even more. We are the silver state. We have produced a lot of silver over the years. In the mid-90s, again, the largest amount of silver production was done in the state of Nevada by a few different operations. And then you can see the price of silver compared to it as well. Again, the price of silver is now over $110 compared to when this was put together just a few weeks ago. So really unique time that we're in for commodity prices, but you do really see the difference and change of silver production through the years in the state of Nevada and how it's slowly declined. Copper, on the other hand, has kind of bounced on and off. You can see that big drop in 2000. That's when a mine went into care and maintenance. Now that mine in Ely, Nevada under KGHM is operational, and they've been continuously under operation since then. Copper production in Nevada is a big aspect and big future for mining in Nevada, and for everything we use with electronics is very important in that aspect. Lithium production. I do not have the graph of commodity of lithium prices. It's very hard to get an accurate graph of that. We did see a spike a few years ago on it that went, I think, over $80,000 a ton. It is back down to, I think, $12,000 or $13,000 a ton, somewhere in that range again. But we've been producing lithium for a long time in the state of Nevada. This is just going back to when we have very accurate records in our Division of Minerals. With that, it is a requirement by every operation to provide production statistics to the Division of Minerals on an annual basis. That is due in April, and we're actually going through a rulemaking process, and in a few weeks we'll be having a commission meeting and trying to bump that time frame up to the February timeframe to match the same time reporting for net proceeds and minerals tax. That'll allow us to get the data out there faster and have better reporting statistics on it. But lithium, again, is something that's been produced, and we've seen a ton in the headlines on it. With that said, Nevada is unique where it has not one but two taxes that are unique to the minerals industry. The net proceeds and minerals tax, which is in the Constitution, up to a 5% net tax. You can see over the years, and this information comes from the Department of Taxation, what that is. Obviously, in 1999, when gold was like $300 an ounce roughly, don't quote me on that exact number, somewhere in that range, right, the net versus gross was a lot different. You see a big bump in 2011, 2012. That was when gold went all of a sudden up to $1,600 to $1,800 an ounce. It was a big change. Right now, we're going to see that again. So in 2024, net proceeds, roughly $190 million, half of it to the state general education fund, half of it to the counties where those minerals were produced. And then the new gold silver excise tax, which was put in the 2021 session. In 2024, it was roughly $84 million. When I put this presentation together, that data wasn't out. Since then, it's come out. I think it came out around $86 million. We anticipate these to increase this next year and potentially significantly increase this next year. So again, the gold silver excise tax is 100% dedicated to the state general education fund. The net proceeds is half to the county as produced, half to the state general education fund as well. So a big contributor there for that. With that, though, you see a 20-year history of the gross versus net. Again, we anticipate kind of that same as that 2011-12 timeframe peak this next coming year. But one of the big things you can see is 81% of all the minerals that come from it are from, in order, from most at least, Lander, Eureka, and Humboldt County. 81% of those mineral commodity from the net proceeds is coming from those. In the future, there's a few other operations that may or may not come online that may diversify a little bit of that, but that is what we're currently seeing for the state of Nevada. So that is what I'm covering for mining right now. I'm happy to take questions at the end on it if you guys have any more questions on it. I'm now going to jump into geothermal. So here is production of geothermal in the state since 1985 when we first had production. You can see that the price has changed over the years. We actually took a slight decrease in price, but we're seeing an increase in actual megawatt hours sold in the state of Nevada. Here is the permitting oversight for geothermal. So going back to the county level. So generally, we got to remember Nevada is 85 to 87% federal land. I forget that exact number. 60-something% of that is BLM. A lot of permitting is through the Bureau of Land Management and the Division of Minerals. We are a dual permitting state. We ensure that we are being permitted, both of us at the same time. So on the federal side, there's quite a bit of permitting oversight. The Geothermal Steam Act, FLPMA, NEPA, Energy Policy Act. Safe Drinking Water Act, or EPA Class 5 wells, and that's going to be under the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, Division of Environmental Protection, their underground injection control program. They've had primacy for a very long time for all wells. They're the ones that implement that for the state of Nevada. Multiple Mineral Development Act is something that can be used. National Historic Preservation, Clean Water Act, Endangered Species Act are all part of the permitting. And then there's also, for the federal side, the BLM regulatory and policies. And these are the rulemaking processes that the BLM will go through, and those have determining factors in the process for it. For the state of Nevada, the Division of Minerals, 534A is the well drilling and production statistics. That is where all the permitting for this is. Division of Environmental Protection, 445A, 445B. 445A is the UIC program and their water pollution controls. 445B is any production, goes to air permit processes as well. Division of Water Resources, which we'll speak later, has 533 and 534 on water. If producing energy, Public Utilities Commission, and then you start getting down to the more local level stuff on some of them for state fire marshal, county permits, business and industry, and Department of Transportation all may or may not have some sort of permitting aspect for a geothermal operation within the state of Nevada. So next, I'm going to dive into how do you get the mineral rights for geothermal on a federal land. So there is a leasing process. This leasing process also has a royalty and a funding mechanism to it. So 43 CFR 3200, what happens is a company or a proponent will nominate a lease. At that point in time, that lease will be nominated. The BLM will have to go through an either EA or DNA NEPA adequacy, decision NEPA adequacy for each one of those parcels that is nominated. And those all include a 15 to 30 day public comment period. Then those are posted of notice for a competitive lease sale. Those are posted. Right now, the BLM is working on the lease sale for October 2026. They're going through this process now and working and compiling the information. And then it goes out to a public sale. So anybody could bid on these. You have to register to bid, but it's all public sale, open auction on it. The annual lease payments on the bid process starts at $2 per acre for the first year, and then after that goes up to $3 to $10 for 10 years, and after 10 years, up to $5 an acre. And then if you get to production on your leases, there's a royalty payment. So 1.75% of the gross proceeds for the first 10 years and 3.5% for 10 years after that. So this is how it is managed for how you could acquire the geothermal rights. It is underneath the Geothermal Steam Act. It is a leasable mineral, not a locatable mineral. And the map on the right, it's hard to see at that scale, but those are the active geothermal leases in the state of Nevada on federal lands. So what does this result in? This results in revenues and the royalties and how it works. So the October 21st, 2025 geothermal lease sale had the highest revenue I've created from a geothermal sale in the United States. It was 113 parcels with up to 377,000 acres. 86 of those parcels received bids with covering 280,000 acres. The high bid was by far and away the biggest one that we've ever seen on record, $410 per acre for a total bid of one parcel of just over 5,000 acres of just over $2 million. Right? The previous bids last year in 2024 set the record and it was like $205 an acre. Previous high bid before that was in the, I think, 80s or somewhere around there. So it is exponentially growing on some of these bids. A lot of these parcels of the 86 sold closer to that $2 range, but there are some of them in the 400, there's some of them in between there, right? But in total, $9.4 million was paid for geothermal leases on this, or in this sale. The key that we see of this and an aspect that's really important for the state is there's actually a revenue split. For all these sales on federal lands, 50% of it goes to the state, 25% goes to the county where the geothermal lease is, and then 25% to the U.S. Treasury so the BLM could actually manage the program. There's over 1 million acres under lease in the state of Nevada right now. It seems like a big number, but when you look at the actual disturbance of these geothermal sites, it is a fraction of a percentage. So the annual lease payments in FY24 to the state of Nevada was $2.25 million according to the annual lease payments was $2.25 million according to Department of Interior. Looking into this using the openbudget.nv.gov, which is a great resource if you're looking at anything budget in the state, a total of $7.6 million was received under the Federal Mineral Leasing Act revenue to the Department of Education. Again, this is another revenue source to the Nevada's Department of Education. So how are regulations managed in the state of Nevada? So geothermal resource is defined under NRS 534A. Geothermal resource means the natural heat of the earth and the energy associated with that natural heat, pressure, and all dissolved or entrained minerals that may be attained from the medium used to transfer that heat, but excluding hydrocarbons and helium. And then we dive into the water and what we're here to talk about today. Applicable procedures for appropriation. A consumptive use of water brought to the surface outside of a geothermal well is subject to appropriations of chapters 534 and 533, except for water that is removed from an aquifer or geothermal reservoir to develop and attain geothermal resource if the water is returned or re-injected into the same aquifer or reservoir. The reasonable loss of water during the drilling and testing, and temporary failure of a system, as long as it's not excessive amount. So this is what this is based off of, is if you are pumping a geothermal brine from a geothermal resource and then re-injecting it back into that same resource, it is a non-consumptive and does not need an appropriation. There's one project in Nevada that is still using a water right appropriations, and that's the Wabasca plant, which is actually the first geothermal plant in the 1980s, and they're drilling injection wells because they're going through the process of changing that and getting it to an injection. That's just outside of Yerington, on the way to Yerington from Carson City. So that one is the only one left that is actually using a consumptive use for that. Any consumptive use of fluids to develop or operate the plant needs to be acquired through an appropriation or buy the water rights for that. What the Division of Minerals permits. Okay, so we really focus on the location, the subsurface of these wells, right? Where the drilling permit. So we're really focused on the subsurface. What type of well is it? There's 4 main types of geothermal wells: thermal gradient, observation, production, injection. Production and injection are the 2 larger ones. So the diameters of these wells could drastically vary, and the depth of them too as well. And I'll talk about that in a moment. We want to focus on the depth, the temperatures, who has the mineral rights, making sure that they have the mineral rights or the lease or an agreement with the lease, and the geologic formations. The Division of Minerals does not permit in a silo. Under NRS, we're required to notify the other state agencies. So we notify Department of Wildlife, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, the State Engineer, and Division of Environmental Protection. Every permit we receive with a complete application is sent to them for their review and their applicable laws. And then every time we permit something and give a permit, we also send it back to them that these were permitted moving forward. What we're really focused on the permits is the casing, the cement and annular space, and filling that annular space. Blowout prevention, so ensuring that if you're drilling at significant depths, that there isn't going to be a blowout and a failure of the well. Bonding, so anytime there is a drilling, there is a bonding associated with it. The cuttings and logs, so Nevada has a unique law where we require all cuttings and logs to be skeletonized and actually sent to the Bureau for collection, so there's future research and data associated to the public of these. There is a confidentiality period of 5 years on geothermal, but the Bureau of Mines and Geology has the fun issue of trying to find places for all these cuttings into the future. That's another topic. And then we receive monthly production and injection reports, so we track what is produced, the volumes that are flown, and all aspects of it. For the casing designs, some of the things under 534A260, surface casings must provide for control of formation of fluids and protection of fresh water. Just like Carrie was saying, that these are looking at deep geothermal brines, not the freshwater surface or access to the freshwater surface of these. So when we're looking at it, we're making sure that these casing and all drilling well designs are isolating the freshwater aquifers. They must be cemented, and cementing must be circulated up to the annulus of the surface. So that cement, when they go down, they set the casing, and then they fill the outer annulus space with cement to the surface. So it's not only a metal casing, then it's cement on the outside of that. And with multiple casings, this is a very generic thing that I drew in PowerPoint, so don't hold me to the exact accuracy of it. But you have a conductor casing, which is generally the very big surface. That is the initial, to set the well for the drill rig. That could be anywhere from 30 to 100 plus feet, it's generally relatively shallow. Then you have surface casing. Surface casing is gonna go much deeper than that. If needed, they'll do an intermediate casing and then potentially even a production casing. The production casing sometimes can be slotted from a certain distance. It could be slotted the whole way, but it's gonna be much after the initial casing. The cementing must be at least 10% of the depth. So with that, the question earlier was, what are the depths that we're looking at? So when we look at geothermal production in the state of Nevada, the average depth of traditional geothermal or conventional geothermal is 4,000 feet. So we're looking at 4,000 feet is the average depth. Some of them are a little shallower, some of them are a little bit deeper, but we're seeing a change. Over the past 5 years, we've seen that average increase to nearly 5,500 feet or 1 mile deep. That is for conventional geothermal. So these are not near surface, these are deep geothermal wells. EGS or next generation are much, much deeper. We've actually seen the shallowest we've seen for proposals on those is 8,000 feet, with more of them being more closer to 10 to 12,000 feet. And then you start seeing those advanced geothermals that were talked about, the closed loop and the, I'm going to forget the name of the other one. Some of those are 4 to 5 kilometers. The reason why those are still in test is the drilling technologies need to be advanced to be able to drill at that depth, that heat, that temperature economically. We know we could drill that deep, but if you're spending $500 million to drill a well, you're not going to take a long time to get a net return right on that. So they got to be able to figure out how can you do this and advance that technology to drill that depth right there. We're seeing a lot of the technology coming from the oil and gas industry to this, and that's where the drilling technology is being advanced from. So again, they must be cemented at 10% of the total depth, and the other strings, if you have multiple casings, must overlap by at least 100 feet and be cemented during that overlap. So with that, I didn't talk about the water, right? Water in that, all water for injection of these and the tracking of the water and the chemistry of the waters is under the Division of Environmental Protection's UIC program. So they are the ones doing that. We partner with them. We work with them all the time. We talk to them on a weekly basis probably. So this is something that we work through on that. They're the ones that are handling the grant, all the injection, because the Division of Environmental Protection has had primacy from the EPA for, I don't know, close to 30 years, somewhere in there, which is really fortunate that we have that within the state. I actually found out recently the state of Pennsylvania, with all their oil production, actually does not have primacy. So all primacy for drilling of oil and gas wells in Pennsylvania actually goes through the EPA. So it's actually even adds another layer of it. So that is where we're focused on the water. But for us, ours is the subsurface focus, ensuring that the freshwater fluids is not going to be interacting with it, and that we are ensuring the drilling is engineered, designed to meet the standards of the state. With that, we could see an increase in geothermal. So here is the permits going all the way back to 1985. There was a huge boom in the mid-2000s. There was a lot of permits issued, as you could see in 2009. Quite a few wells drilled, but there are a lot of thermal gradient wells. Thermal gradient wells are much shallower. Those wells are not to intersect the geothermal resource. They're basically testing the temperature of the earth, right? Plug and abandon fairly quickly afterwards. And back then they did a lot more gridding. So they go to a basin and lay out grids and drill wells. Now we're using a lot more remote sensing, a lot more geophysics surveys and other opportunities to help find these blind systems that Carrie was referencing. So they're actually being much more efficient in their drilling. But as you can see in 2025, we had the 4th highest year for permits ever and the 3rd highest year for actually wells drilled. So where can you find this? This is all found on the Division Minerals website. All geothermal permits, all dissolved mineral resource permits are all on our website. As soon as they're there, we get them up as fast as we can on our website. But also another great resource we like to highlight is our open data site. So the Division of Minerals has a very unique open data site to where other states and federal agencies have tried mimicking quality of it. They have been unable to do it. You could go in there and look at the history of all oil, gas, geothermal wells. You could start looking at production statistics. You could look at the individual plants, their volume of what they produce on an annual basis. So it's all available free online to the public, and the open data site is even downloadable for free as well. So the next big thing is enhanced geothermal. There's been a lot of headlines on this. This Division of Minerals is very closely following it. Carrie kind of mentioned the science behind it. But there was a USGS article last May. Enhanced geothermal systems in the Great Basin could supply 10% of the U.S. electricity demand. That is a huge number if you think about it. Right now, we supply less than 1%, right? So this magnitude scale different. So we're very closely monitoring this in the technologies. And the Division of Minerals in August held a workshop on changes to NAC 534A to look and to be able to better regulate these. We are working on them right now. We are working with LCB on getting the first draft from them out and answering a whole bunch of questions. And we're focusing really on a lot of aspects of monitoring before the stimulation projects happen, how stimulations will occur, the process for permitting stimulations, as well as induced seismicity, and having a monitoring plan for induced seismicity with these to ensure that there is a plan to ensure there isn't constant induced seismicity from them. So that is where we are in enhanced geothermal. The process is long and lengthy and a lot of fun. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, now I'm going to dive into dissolved mineral resources. So dissolved mineral resources, this was a new bill. Here is our permitting of it in the history of our program. You can see 2024 was by far and away the biggest permitting year we ever had. This is mainly boreholes. Now wells are a little bit different, but 2025 had the most amount of wells drilled in a single year. So it was created in 2017 session, codified code in 2018. Since 2018, 62 wells have been permitted. Out of those 62, 31 wells have been drilled. 10 wells have already been plugged and abandoned. 10 wells have been pumped, with seven of them currently reporting. Each one of these dissolved mineral resource exploration projects through NRS is allowed up to 5 acre-feet of flowing their wells per project, not per well. We monitor this as a quarterly reporting to us. A total for all of these wells since 2018, only 4.75 feet total have been flown out of all projects. So there's been minimal water impact. I think that's maybe up to 15 households average use of water in the state. So minimal water has been flown, but this is something to look at in dissolved mineral resources. And the reason why we are closely watching and tracking this is the idea and concept under direct lithium extraction. So the idea is traditional lithium production, what I showed you the statistics for earlier, is a brine evaporation where they pump out all the brine, put it on the playa, evaporate it out, get a high enough concentration salts, and then process for the lithium. That's about a 2-year process to do. DLE, which was proven by SLB in Nevada under a pilot scale, produced lithium from DLE at scale. It produces the lithium 500 times faster than conventional method while only using 10% of the land and up to recovery of 96% of the lithium. So brine evaporation, you're recovering only 45 to maybe 55% of the lithium. So you're actually leaving a lot of it in the salts that are left there. And salt is not a locatable mineral. It's not a leasable mineral. It's a saleable mineral. So it then goes into a different mineral right for those aspects as well. Like I said, the SLB solution, and this is right, they're not the only ones looking at this technology. This is the one that just was proven in Nevada, has recovery in just hours instead of years. It absorbs the lithium ions while rejecting most of the undesired ions and uses significantly less water than spent brine. So this is what's being developed. And then I wanted to talk about, because this is something that everybody loves to talk about, lithium and worldwide production.
And I think it's all connected and really appreciate it. But you're a little bit over that 20 minutes. And I know that there are questions. But please.
I'll go quick, I promise.
That sounds good. Thank you.
So as you can see here in Nevada, we did not produce much, roughly 240,000 metric tons of lithium produced in the world. Here are the reserves. The U.S. has 19 million according to the USGS. This is before most operations in Nevada had updated it. We did analysis with the Bureau of Mines and Geology. We put out a great report on lithium here in the U.S. Thacker Pass itself has over 14 million tons in their reserves now. So they are significantly changing the output for lithium in the world, but as well as in the U.S. But you look at what it is for brine. Right now, the reserves for brine is less than 1 million tons, right? So until a DLE technology proves itself in an economic form, that's what we're seeing is we're tracking it, monitoring it, but we do see an anticipated amount of most of the lithium production in Nevada actually coming from a clay. Okay, mineral rights. I'm going to dive into this very quickly. 3 main things to focus on: leasable minerals, oil, gas, geothermal, sodium, and a couple of other ones. Saleable minerals, common varieties, sand, gravel, aggregate, stuff for building, stuff like that. And then the big one, locatables. Metallics and non-metallics, gold, silver, copper, lithium, fluorspar, barite, and many others. There's a lot of differences between them, and they have different laws regulating them. However, with that, geothermal is a leasable, lithium is a locatable, And then you could also have the access of private minerals associated with that. Each of them has to be considered as a real property. That's what they're considered. Water rights does not give access to dissolved minerals because the minerals are either owned by the federal government, they're either privately held, or they've been withdrawn, right? They're not always available. Water can be used as a medium to transport the dissolved mineral resource or the geothermal resource to the heat of the earth. But if the water of the geothermal brine is not returned to the same formation, then they would need a water right. So water does not equal mineral rights on this, and they're completely separate, even though they're one and the same. But then there comes another aspect. Geothermal leasing does allow for byproducts to be co-produced from a geothermal lease. So underneath the Geothermal Leasing Act, you could produce byproducts exclusive of oil, gas, hydrocarbons, heliums, up to 75%, or that would be less than 75% of the value of the geothermal steam. So you could co-produce these. We haven't seen this yet. This is something we are watching. There is technologies being developed for that. If you're able to utilize DLE in a manner to be able to use a geothermal resource and a DLE and be able to produce some lithium from it as a benefit, you can do that. But the areas you need to focus on, the mineral rights would have to be evaluated and potentially regulated under different laws. So you may have to permit this same facility under two different rules and regulations. There's also the locatable versus the leasable and the load claims and placer claims, which is a whole lawsuit that we're seeing now. Again, technology advancement. You're not going to be able to run the volume that geothermal does through a DLE technology in that time, right? That's something that needs to be looked at, and there's opportunities for that.
Thank you, sir.
And go from there. And that's it.
Yes, thank you, because I do want to make sure that we also honor the people that are presenting after you and that they have time, and that also there's time for questions. Speaking of which, Assemblymember DeLong, because I knew that you would have one. No? Okay. Senator Ellison.
I got a very small one. How long does it take to get the permits on the geothermal through federal government?
It varies drastically. We've seen significant time, like Carrie said, over a year, and we've seen stuff turn around a lot faster. Recently, some geothermal projects have utilized the emergency EA, 14-day EA on this, but all those projects we've seen were actually projects that were in the queue under previous EAs for some of them over years before they got that permit put through. So it does vary. I can't say an exact number. It's not something I 100% track, but it's more than the 90 days that's underneath our regulations.
Thank you.
So I do have a question as well. Very quickly, you had mentioned that there is a possibility anticipated that we'll have a significant increase in the excise taxes, even though it appears we are not producing as much. Could you really quickly go into that just a little bit more?
Yeah, so the gold and silver is a gross up to, I forget, 1-point-something%. So that is a gross revenue. So we anticipate the revenue to go up because the price of gold is almost doubled in that time frame. So it is a slight decrease in price, but the gross revenue will be much higher. And then that will then result in a higher net versus gross proceeds for the net proceeds of tax. So we do anticipate to go up. I don't know what that number is going to be, but I do think it's going to be higher than we've seen before.
Good news for Economic Forum then in May, and even better news for the budget for education in particular. My last question has to do with the permitting. Does your office work with the counties? There's been some discussion about county, especially smaller counties, which appear to be where the bulk of mining is, has one person having to go through all that permit process. Is your office helping them, or are those counties on their own?
We would be happy to help assist as we can, but those counties have yet to reach out to us and ask for assistance.
I will make sure representatives from NACO is aware of that then, the Nevada Association of County Officers. All right, seeing no other questions, thank you so much for the very in-depth presentation. I'm sure we'll be in discussion again. Let's move on now to our next agenda item, the water rights related to dissolved minerals and geothermal. If we could please welcome our acting state engineer, Mr. Thorson, thank you, by the way, and Deputy Administrator Bulletin. Please begin whenever you are ready.
Thanks, Chair Anderson and members of the committee. I'll kind of give a quick intro while James is trying to get this thing fired up. As you said, my name is Chris Thorson, CHRO RISTHORSON, and I am the acting state engineer for the Division of Water Resources. With me today, I have James Balatin, deputy administrator for the division. We're really happy to be here to provide more information on how water rights are handled when dealing with the dissolved mineral and geothermal resource development within the state. As you heard from Rob, our two agencies work together on permitting geothermal and dissolved mineral projects pursuant to NRS 534A and 534B, and then 533 and 534. In fact, we've worked with the Division of Minerals and NDEP to establish a permitting guide and frequently asked questions document to help operators navigate this permitting process from a state aspect. This is located on our website and the Division of Minerals website for everyone to access and use. Before we get into the details of how each industry is handled, James is going to cover some general background of Nevada water law to kind of set that stage.
Thank you, Chair. James Balatin, Deputy Administrator of the Division of Water Resources. For the record, thank you, Chris. As a refresher for the committee, Nevada water law has a few core tenets that it shares with most other Western states. Underlying these core principles is the public's ownership of water pursuant to NRS 533-025. All water within the boundaries of the state belongs to the public, whether surface water or groundwater, and people with water rights do not own the actual water, rather they are permitted to use the public's water. The first major tenet is the prior appropriation doctrine, first in time, first in right to the use of water. In other words, those with the oldest or most senior water rights have priority over those with newer or junior water rights. The prior appropriation doctrine dictates that a senior water right holder is supposed to receive the entire duty of the right to use the public's water before a more junior water right receives any water. In times of shortage, the most junior water rights are the first to go without water, and that is the process that is known as curtailment. Second is beneficial use. Under NRS 533.035, beneficial use shall be the basis, the measure, and the limit to the right to use the public's water. Beneficial use has been described as singularly the most important public policy underlying the water laws of Nevada and many in the western states. In other words, the right to use water depends on a party actually needing and using the water for a beneficial purpose, such as irrigation, municipal, mining, commercial, wildlife, etc. Lastly is the use it or lose it principle, which is tied to beneficial use doctrine and the scarcity of water in Nevada. Failure to show good faith and reasonable diligence toward the use of water will result in cancellation of permits. Similarly, failure to use water that was previously certificated or failure to resume use of that water will result in forfeiture. Water rights can also be lost through abandonment, where there is evidence of intent to abandon a water right. For purposes of our discussion today, the key statutory chapters governing DWR and water rights are NRS chapters 533 and 534. NRS chapter 533 governs the legal right to use water and specifically controls the permitting process for both surface water and groundwater, including both new appropriations and applications to change existing appropriations. NRS chapter 534 provides specific laws governing accessing groundwater and the state engineer's authorities to regulate the resource. Next, I want to touch on a subject that is especially relevant today, particularly when we discuss geothermal, and that's consumptive versus non-consumptive uses of water. Consumptive use refers to water use where the water is withdrawn from a source and consumed or depleted and not returned back to that same source, thus reducing the availability of water for other users. Consumptive uses are what most people think of in terms of water use. For example, irrigation, ore processing and dewatering and mining, municipal water supply, and water for livestock. Non-consumptive water use refers to water that is used but returned to its original source without depletion of the resource, so theoretically it remains available to other users. Non-consumptive uses include geothermal reinjection, hydropower generation, closed-loop cooling, and rapid infiltration basins, or RIBs. Under Nevada law, as stated earlier, water rights are generally regulated under NRS 533 and 534. All uses, including non-consumptive uses, generally require a permit because they involve a beneficial use of the public's water, even if the uses do not reduce the overall availability. The only exception to this is in geothermal under NRS 534A.040, where only the portion of the water that is actually consumed requires a water right. No permit is needed for the water that is not consumed. However, all water is still accounted for through various mechanisms. Some water right holders report the amount of water used to DWR, while in some areas, division staff read meters annually. This data is included in the water use inventory reports maintained and published by the Division of Water Resources. I'll now pass it back to Chris on some specifics regarding geothermal resources and dissolved minerals and how they fit into Nevada water law and the permitting process.
Thanks, James. Again, Chris Thorson for the record. So how do water rights work with the geothermal resource development? As defined in statute, a geothermal resource in Nevada is defined as the natural heat of the earth and its associated energy. This can include geothermal water being used as an avenue to harness this energy. When evaluating a geothermal project, we consider two different types of water. That's non-consumptive and consumptive uses of that water. James kind of explained those two different categories of use of water within the state. Under NRS 534A, a water right is not required for non-consumptive use of water when it is returned to the same aquifer or reservoir. However, if the water is not returned to the same aquifer, then a water right would be required by the division. Next slide. Most geothermal projects require some form of water right for consumptive purposes. Rob kind of went into this a little bit, but whether it's for cooling water, potable water supply, or even to account for the losses within that system. Per NRS 534A.070, NDOM is required to forward applications to our office to ensure compliance with NRS 533 and 534. Our staff review these to determine if there will be a consumptive use related to the pending application in front of NDOM, and our staff responds accordingly. Additionally, the division can impose permit terms on geothermal projects as needed, as supported under NRS 534A. As previously mentioned, we have worked with NDOM to develop a permitting guide and frequently asked questions document to help answer a lot of these common questions on how to get through the permitting process within the state. Go back one, sorry. All right, so switching gears. Now, how are projects that mine for dissolved minerals handled? These projects involve pumping water that contains a dissolved mineral to the surface for mineral extraction and processing. This is covered under NRS 534B. Under this statute, any water that is pumped for this purpose requires a water right from the division. These applications are processed like any other water right application and are governed by NRS 533 and 534. Once the project is permitted, the project must report usage to the division and comply with all permit terms issued by the permit from our office. So how does a dissolved mineral project get permitted? NDOM issues the exploration permits, which Rob went over through that. Each exploration project may extract up to 5 acre-feet of water per project to determine whether the resource is viable. After the exploration is complete, the project must apply for a water right through the Division of Water Resources, and this could potentially include both a non-consumptive and a consumptive use component. These applications are reviewed under the same criteria as all water right applications per NRS 533.370. If approved, the project may proceed in the division that will oversee water use of that project, and then they are normally required to report all water use to our office. The permitting guide that I previously mentioned also includes these types of projects. So what are the key takeaways of all of this? First, all state agencies have developed a clear guide to help public navigate the permitting process for both dissolved mineral and geothermal development in the state. Second, there's ongoing collaboration between the state agencies and the federal government. When there's a proposed project, we notify each other to ensure that each agency is aware of the pending application that's coming forward. Finally, there's an existing framework within statute that clearly defines when a water right is required for these types of industries, providing transparency, consistency in the permitting process. And with that, we'll open it up for questions. I'll let Rob take some of my time.
Poor Rob. Sorry, Rob, to have done that to you. Are there any questions? Wow. I think we're all so stunned. Now, It's right, lookouts. Thank you so much for the presentation.
We have a question.
There
down
is
here.
somebody in Vegas that has a question, and I'm sorry I don't know who it was. So who would ever like to jump on in, please do so.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. Sorry, my throat's a little scratchy here. Question not really for the presentation, but about the state engineer. Do we have a process on what we're going to follow in order to get a new state engineer? Is there an employment process that was announced?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I think right now, since we're really prepared for this information, instead of putting both the acting state engineer on the spot, because he's looking at me like deer in the headlights, I think we all are right now with that. Maybe instead what we can do is in the next meeting possibly go through what role the legislative process has with the state water engineer and any sort of information that we might have with it. Because if I understand correctly, I might ask our analysis to double check this. I don't believe the legislative process has anything to do with the selection of the water engineer, if I remember correctly. If you could. Or would our legal counsel like to do so? But we will have information in our February meeting based upon this question.
I can add that, this is Chris Thorson for the record, the state engineer position is appointed by the director of the department, and he is actively searching for the next state engineer.
Vice Chair, does that satisfy the question?
Not 100%, but I'll follow up in the proper route. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you so much for jumping into a position that is definitely not easy and has, I'm sure, more than a few headaches. So thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you. All right, let's move on now to our next presentation, presentation number 10, a presentation on 2025's Assembly Bill 109. Excuse me. We have a few presenters joining us today. Assemblymember LaRue Hatch, Chairman Stephen Wadsworth of the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, Kyle Roenick, Executive Director of the Great Basin Water Network, and Dr. Steve Emmerman, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, with Malik Consulting, who will be discussing Assembly Bill 109 from the 2025 session. I believe Dr. Emmerman will be doing his presentation from Zoom. So there's a few of you up here. And so every time you need to answer a question or speak, if you could please remember to state your name. We appreciate you joining us today, and you may begin whenever you are ready.
Okay, well, good morning. Thank you so much, Chair Anderson and committee. I am Assemblymember Selena LaRue Hatch, and I represent Assembly District 25 up in Northwest Reno, and I am the proud sponsor of AB 109, and I will allow my co-presenters to introduce themselves briefly.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Stephen Wadsworth, Steven Wads Worth. I'm the chairman of the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe.
Good morning. I am Kyle Roerink, Kyleroerink, and I'm the executive director of the Great Basin Water Network. Thank you for having us. And I'll pass it to Dr. Emmerman.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Emmerman. I'm the owner of Malach Consulting, mining consulting firm in Spanish Fork, Utah.
And thank you so much, Chair Anderson, for giving us the time to discuss AB 109 this morning. I would like to draw the committee's attention to our coalition letter that we submitted. I just wanted to draw your attention to that because it really is the genesis of this bill. I was approached by a variety of groups, from rural counties and water users to public interest advocates to tribal members, all pointing out this loophole, it seemed, in a bill from 2017 and wanting to just correct what we think may have been an oversight or maybe a mistake that has left open some loopholes in our water law. And so really the goal of this bill is not to create dramatic changes. It is not to hurt any industry. It really is to protect what I think is the gold standard of water law in the West and make sure that we are applying it fairly, which is why we are calling this the Water Rights Fairness Act. Now, when we talk about this gap, we just heard from our state engineer, and I love that he went before us because he pointed some things out that I think are really important. And my favorite sentence that he said is, all of the water of Nevada belongs to the public. And I think that is such an incredible thing. And I am so proud to be in a state where that is true. And he also pointed out that every single water user that puts the waters of this state to beneficial use has to be permitted. That includes non-consumptive uses. That includes farmers or ranchers that are using water non-consumptively. It includes hydropower, which is using it non-consumptively. Yet, for some reason, geothermal seems to be the only exception to this rule. And when I saw that, that was confusing to me. And I really wanted to look at how do we make sure that all of us, every single one of us, is on the same page when we are accessing the waters of the state, and we are all going through the same process. I think importantly, we also want to clarify so there is nothing confusing, there is nothing nebulous. Everyone fills out the same one-page permit, pays the same almost $300 to have their permit accessed and reviewed by the state water engineer, and everyone is publicly noticed and goes through the process. So that's it. That is what AB 109 is. It is not meant to harm anything. It is not meant to be a dramatic change. It is meant to make sure we are all on the same page. And I will pass it to my co-presenter to give us more details.
Thank you so much, Assembly Member, and thank you to the committee again. Kyle Roehring for the record. You know, we've heard a couple of things today in our presentations, and this is we are talking about the future of Nevada, and it's exciting that we have this opportunity to discuss the future of the waters of the state. We're talking with AB 109 bills that are dealing with waters that do run deep. We're largely dealing with groundwaters. We're dealing, and we're largely talking about non-consumptive uses. So this bill is dealing with entities that want to stick really big straws in the ground, pump that water out, and then they want to re-inject that water. And you would call that non-consumptive, and that's largely, I think, when we talk about new geothermal projects, DLE projects, direct lithium extraction, that's what we're really talking about, is sticking these straws in the ground, extracting whatever you want, whether that be heat or minerals, and then re-injecting. And, you know, that is, in many cases, in the nation's driest state, better than, you know, I think for some operations where you would pump water and then maybe have it sit in pools where then it evaporates, at least from a consumptive perspective versus non-consumptive. So, you know, but we also have to think that, you know, pumping and then re-injecting isn't just a silver bullet all around. You know, pumping is kind of the issue that we want to get at here. And pumping can lead to certain types of instabilities underground that can have impacts for us above ground. And what we're really talking about and trying to prevent is springs going dry. We're trying to prevent conflict among existing water rights users. We are trying to prevent harms to the public interest. And I mentioned those criteria about conflict and harms to the public interest because they are a part of the core tenets of Nevada water law in NRS 533-370 Section 2. And those are the areas where, you know, the state engineer really has to live by. And so again, AB 109 really is about limiting conflict, limiting harms to the public interest, and also about providing due process, because another core tenet of our water law is ensuring that the public can engage and understand matters of what's happening with the waters of the state. And we believe that the waters of the state are also those deep waters that have been discussed here today. We've heard state regulators admit to connectivity with those waters, whether, however you want to define geothermal brines, we've heard regulators today say that there's connectivity with our water sources in those brines. So that means you could have impacts there. We've also heard the state admit today that there are no guarantees about what could happen to freshwater sources if you have pumping for deep brines. And we also have heard the state admit today that there are no permits required within the Division of Water Resources for a non-consumptive use. So AB 109 as drafted, not perfect. We want to help, we can help make that better. And, I think this is a starting point. And, from there, I want to pass it to Chairman Wadsworth for just so he can offer some of his perspectives. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kyle. Yes, Stephen Wadsworth again for the record. There's been a lot said today, including the last presentation too. And I think one thing that's definitely been missed from that presentation, unless I misheard him, was, there's also that government-to-government consultation with tribes. That was not mentioned. Again, I'm sorry if it was, but I did not hear that. And, as a primary water holder on the Truckee River, the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe has claims 1 and 2. They did a nice educational piece on what that means. That means that no matter what happens, the tribe is getting their water before anybody else. But that doesn't mean, we hold that as, over anybody's heads for the time being, because we as a tribe watch all the water for our entire region. And of course, this is going to be statewide, but there's that accountability piece that comes with all the people within the state of Nevada. And that includes all the tribes. You got 28 tribes that have to watch all of their resources, no matter where they're coming from, even if they're right on their borders, because there has to be that consultation government to government. So without a permit, you're just kind of left until you start seeing, stuff right along your borders, and then you got your tribal members asking, hey, what's going on over there? We don't know. There's no permit. It's really that simple. I mean, as other legislatures yourself, that have to answer to the people, you guys would have the same thing. Something's going on in your neighborhood, we don't know what it is. There's no permit for that. It's non-consumptive ground use. And that non-consumptive ground use, it's still disruption. Anything that disrupts the environment is going to have repercussions sooner or later. Thank you.
Kyle Roehring for the record. And just to play off that again, we just want to underscore what we are asking for is for non-consumptive uses, all non-consumptive uses, just like a hydropower project that claims to be 100% non-consumptive has to go through the Division of Water Resources permitting process. That's simply it. And I think it's important to really, again, get a grip on this non-consumptive idea, especially for things beyond exploration. A lot of what we heard about earlier when we heard 534A mentioned multiple times, that's just for exploration. Regulators have to approve that permit in 10 days. And it also doesn't mandate a public noticing process. So again, I think getting back to non-consumptive, we have Dr. Emmerman here with us just to help give another perspective on what that could really mean. So thank you, Dr. Emmerman.
Okay. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you for having me at this hearing. I would first like to explain the difference between the consumptive use and the non-consumptive use of water. The consumptive use of water is the part of water withdrawn from surface water or groundwater that is evaporated, transpired, incorporated into products or crops consumed by humans or livestock, or otherwise not returned to its source, so that it is not available for immediate use. On the other hand, the non-consumptive use of water is the volume of water withdrawn from surface water or groundwater, but which remains in or is immediately returned to the local water environment, that is, streams, lakes, or aquifers from where it was extracted. There are many examples of non-consumptive water rights that went through proper review by the Nevada State Engineer. Some examples are the Truckee River Permit, the Lamoille Permit, and the Mount Rose Permit. The Truckee River Operating Agreement introduced an alternative means to exercise a water right, which is to forego diversion at the place of use downstream and to store the consumptive use portion of the water consumptive use portion of the water right upstream in the reservoirs. The real issue that we want to address is pumping in problematic groundwater systems. In those cases, pumping can be the problem, and reinjection is not necessarily the solution. Except for very shallow water table aquifers, aquifers are geologic units in which the contained water is pressurized. Once pumping commences, the water pressure decreases, the aquifer undergoes compaction, and the land subsides, which often includes fissures and cracks in infrastructure, such as roads and canals. Once so much groundwater has been pumped that the water pressure drops below its historical level, the aquifer compaction and the land subsidence become irreversible. This means that the aquifer can no longer hold as much water as it did before pumping. Then why is reinjection of water not necessarily the solution? Water cannot necessarily be reinjected at the same rate at which it is pumped. In some cases, attempts to reinject water at the same rate at which it is pumped has caused fracturing and permanent damage to the aquifer. Even so, water cannot be reinjected at the exact same spot from which it is being extracted, which means that there could be a substantial delay for the reinjected water to drain back to its place of origin. For example, if a spring is fed by an aquifer that is pumped and also reinjected, the spring could go dry due to the delay in the reinjected water flowing back to its place of origin. In summary, reinjection does not guarantee or fully prevent impacts or changes that could harm water users, businesses, wildlife, plant life, and other factors. This leads to harm of private property and the public interest. Currently, the uncertainty about permitting standards leaves communities in the dark. This means that the state engineer, existing water users, and other interests might not even know about proposed pumping that could impact their rights. By ensuring compliance with existing law, there is transparency, due process, and a public forum. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I think that's all we have. Right now we just believe that setting that process up would be really important as it relates to getting non-consumptive uses permitted by DWR.
Yeah, and Assemblymember LaRue Hatch, for the record, I just want to close this by saying we are not trying to attack the geothermal industry. I am someone that is constantly talking about how we need to switch to renewable energy, that we need to reduce emissions. I'm not someone that's going to come and try to kill an industry that is helping us do that. I believe that it has to be part of the equation. I also believe, though, if a renewable resource like hydropower has to get permitted for a non-consumptive use, then another one in a similar vein like geothermal should go through the same process. I think it is fair, I think it is reasonable, and I think most importantly, it allows for the public process, it allows for the notification, and it ensures that no industry and no water rights user will be surprised by the waters of the state being put to beneficial use without notice. And with that, we stand ready for questions.
Thank you so much. We do have a few. We're actually going to start here in Carson with Assemblymember DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Just a comment on the individual on Zoom. His discussion about aquifer characteristics during pumping. Sounds like he's assuming an isotropic system, which is not usually what you get with geothermal aquifers. Those are usually fracture-controlled aquifers in Nevada. So that compaction issue doesn't seem to be germane to what we're talking about. But my question has to do with, I'm trying to understand what the issue is with regards to a potential effect. And I think you guys are talking about the fact a spring might go dry. Is that what you're talking about?
Madam Chair, Kyle Roaring for the record.
Please go direct.
Springs going dry is certainly a part of conflicts that could certainly occur from non-consumptive pumping.
Are there other conflicts you're thinking of besides a spring going dry? Because I haven't heard anything.
What do you mean you haven't heard anything?
Other than springs going dry.
Oh, well, I think, largely why we came here was because...
Since there are three of you at the table, if you could say your name every time. Sorry about that.
Kyle Roaring for the record. Largely why we assembled this was due to springs and conflicts with springs. And we know that there have been conflicts out in the field amongst parties over the years on entities that have been claiming non-consumptive use. And we're not here to hit at any one given party, but we do know that there have been people who have spent tens of thousands of dollars trying to ameliorate situations with companies that are drilling, pumping, returning. We've seen
specifically
conflict
talking geothermal projects?
on springs with
Are you
geothermal.
specifically talking geothermal projects?
In that case, yes.
And are we expecting the state engineer just to regulate a spring?
Assemblymember LaRue Hatch for the record. I just want to jump in here. I think it is less about us trying to regulate a single issue or a single spring, and more about us trying to make sure that our statutes align with the base tenets of water law. Right? We don't ask, when we ask others to get permits, we don't say, oh, do you have to get this because this one specific spring, right? We have a base understanding that if anyone is putting the waters of the state to beneficial use, which I think we've all agreed from the presentations today that geothermal is a beneficial use, that they should go through the same process. And I think that that is at least my focus and my intention, is it's less about a specific instance and more about the fact that we have discovered this loophole in the law, and we want to make sure it is applied fairly and evenly to all industries and all water users.
Well, to that, I would say that the legislature...
Follow up, Assemblymember DeLong.
I have a follow-up.
Thank you.
I would say that the legislature made a decision with regards to the application of water law to various industries. The geothermal industry is different than most other water users because of the characteristics of where they obtain the water to get the heat. And so I think the legislature made an informed decision about that. Thank you.
I believe that was not really a question, more of a statement, unless there
Chair
was
Anderson,
a question
could I just
there.
respond briefly?
You may briefly.
I would just like to ask my colleague, does that mean he has now endorsed every bill we've passed as a legislature and agrees with it? Or does he think we should maybe look at it sometimes when time has passed and reevaluate?
As it relates to the specific situation we're talking about, I think the legislature made an appropriate decision. That's very specific to what we're talking about.
I think that this conversation can continue outside the interim session, or outside of this interim meeting. Thank you so much for both of you. Next up, Assemblymember Jackson.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Could I respond to the Assembly member since he discussed my presentation?
Yes, please. And if you could please again state your name.
My name is Stephen Emmerman. I'm the owner of Malach Consulting in Spanish Fork, Utah.
You may also answer the question, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I believe the point made by the Assembly member was that if the aquifer is isotropic, I'm not sure whether he meant, I think he meant anisotropic, or if the aquifer is anisotropic, it's not isotropic, which is typical for geothermal aquifers, then you won't have compaction. My first point is that there's someone who needs to make that judgment. Someone like the state engineer has to say, yes, this aquifer, this is anisotropic, we will not have compaction. That's the first point. The second point is this is not correct. An anisotropic aquifer means that you have different hydraulic conductivity, vertical and horizontal. That is not connected with compaction. What happens in compaction is that as you pump out water, the water pressure decreases. That elevated water pressure was holding that aquifer skeleton out. As you decrease that pressure, that aquifer skeleton will contract, and that is completely unrelated to the isotropic or anisotropic nature of the aquifer. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up we will go to Assemblymember Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. And I missed this portion. How does requiring geothermal permits help tribes and other industries?
So, Stephen Wadsworth, for the record, Chairman of the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe. It really ties into all of our reservations. And really, I can only speak to Pyramid Lake. Of course, I don't represent any of the other 27 tribes. But really, it depends on their resources of what you're looking at. You know, at Pyramid Lake, we have geothermal that outlines our borders of our reservation, and we've worked with them to set up monitoring wells because, you know, it could have a direct impact on our resources, i.e. the lake. And then even if you're taking a very large, 10,000 foot ceiling look at everything, there's a big correlation between what happens in the different basins. You know, we have, of course, the Truckee Meadows, we have the Carson, and they're all intertied together. If you're not aware of that, Pyramid Lake, we watch all of these basins because what happens in the Carson directly affects what happens in the Truckee. And that is because if Carson River isn't flowing enough and feeding Lahontan Reservoir, that means more water is diverted through the Truckee, which of course means less water to Pyramid Lake. So that is why for Pyramid Lake, we need to be made aware of these things. Of course, Pyramid Lake is a little bit more on the pulse than some of these other tribes, but it all just ties together with proper notification. Thank you.
Thank you. Follow-up, Assemblymember Jackson?
No, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Pezzina.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I guess two questions, and I apologize if I missed this. One, how many permits do you think this would end up, totaling a year if this were to move forward? And two, how do other states in the region handle this? And thank you very much for the presentation.
Madam Chair, Kyle Roerink, to Senator Pezzina. I don't want to answer how many permits it would affect, but I think the state does total about 1,000 permits a year, and I think this would, in terms of processing applications, about 1,000. And I think this would be, a relatively small number if we were to add to that.
And to clarify, that was 1,000 total permits for everything, not for this. I believe an earlier presentation said we had 20 geothermal plants, or maybe she was saying all power plants?
We have 27.
27 total right now in production. And so I would imagine it is going to be a very small number of new plants that are opening up per year in the future.
Thank you so much. Follow-up, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. And then I guess my other question was, in regards to other states in the region, how do they handle this permitting process for geothermal?
I think Senator Pezzina, Kyle Roerink, what we're seeing happen in Utah, I can speak to applications that have been filed by Fervo in Beaver County. for example, and I've actually had discussions with a number of folks in Beaver County about that. And we can also see it with certain types of dissolved minerals, where there, for example, on the Green River, there was an application for 19 CFS, nearly 14,000 acre-feet, non-consumptive, and that went through the state engineer's process. And so those are two examples where I've personally seen in Utah.
And Assemblymember LaRue Hatch for the record. And what we are seeing is, if it is truly non-consumptive, just like with our current non-consumptive permits, there shouldn't be a long delay. It shouldn't be a conflict. It should be a one page and a $300 and it's processed, right? Because it's not in conflict with other rights. So we're not trying to delay. We're not trying to create years of backlog. It should be a relatively straightforward process if it is a truly non-consumptive use. And I don't want to speak out of turn, and hopefully staff can maybe supplement this later, but I do believe that Nevada is somewhat unique in having this exception, and I know that it has been relatively recent as well.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right. And then, sir, did you also want to answer this question, since it sounds like you are from Utah?
Oh, I don't have anything. This is Stephen Emmerman. I don't have anything to add to what Kyle said.
Thank you. I think that both this presentation and some of the other presentations have truly shown that this is a unicorn industry. And sometimes it fits in with some areas and it doesn't in others. And so from the experiences that have brought this bill forward, have there been specific events that really asked for this bill to be brought forward last session? Or was this more based upon, as was mentioned in the presentation, more of an anecdotal, what's going on with this area? If you can go into that.
Kyle Roehring for the record. We have heard from water users, senior rights water users out on the ground who have experienced conflict with entities, and these things get complicated. And again, we're not here to point fingers or anything like that. We're hearing from people out on the ground, and that's not the only one that we have heard. And this is about limiting conflict in the future. If we are following the process outlined in NRS 533, we are going to ensure that conflicts are limited in the future. And that's, Nevada's water law is the best in the West, and that's why we feel so strongly about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation and for the information. It's a lot for us to have to think about. And I know that we also have a few more presentations on the same item today. Thank you so much for making the drive. Seeing no other questions, right? I should have checked that first. All right, let's go on to the next one, our final presentation. So as soon as I said that we would have lunch, we were able to maybe get through it beforehand. For our final presentation today, we have a representative from the geothermal industry joining us, Erica Fries. I believe I said that right, Friese. Director of Business Development, Ryan Libby, Chief Geologist with ORMAT, Raymond Skopel, hydrologist with SLB, and Vanessa Robertson, Director of Policy and Education with Geothermal Rising. Again, since there are more than one or two of you presenting with us today, every time you answer a question or speak, if you would please say and spell your name. Thank you for presenting. I believe, do we have somebody coming on Zoom? Or is everybody here in person? Everybody's here in person, I think. So whenever you are ready, thank you for joining us.
Perfect. Thank you. Let me get this going real quick. For the record, Vanessa Robertson, Robertson. Good morning, almost good afternoon. I think we can get you to lunch on time. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, members of the public and the industry that are in the room and also in down south in Las Vegas. Again, my name is Vanessa Robertson. I'm the Director of Policy and Education at Geothermal Rising, the nation's largest and longest running geothermal association. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm here to share our concerns with Assembly Bill 109 and to share why, while we fully support protecting Nevada's water resources, we believe the bill, as drafted, would unintentionally hinder Nevada's leadership in geothermal energy. As a nonprofit founded in 1972, our mission is simple: to ensure that geothermal benefits communities, landowners, and the clean energy transition responsibly. We educate, convene, and support the entire geothermal ecosystem. We don't advocate for individual companies or projects. We represent the sector as a whole, across Nevada and all of North America. We have over 100 organizational members and partners who represent diverse groups and voices, from developers, operators, manufacturers, universities, national labs, NGOs, and tribal entities. Many of these companies are represented here in the room today or online. We work across North America to advance geothermal as a clean, reliable, 24/7 energy resource and to support responsible, science-based policy at all levels of government. I think it's important to re-emphasize, because I think we've heard quite a bit already, that geothermal is already one of the most heavily regulated clean energy sectors in the West. To develop a project, companies must complete exploration permits, drilling permits, environmental analysis under the NEPA, resource surveys, injection control permits, and comprehensive utilization plans reviewed by state and federal agencies. These steps already take multiple years to complete, include public comments, and are specifically designed to protect water, land, wildlife, cultural resources, and public safety. Nevada already has strong modern safeguards in place. There we go. So across the country, geothermal is gaining unprecedented momentum, and Nevada is at the center of it. From a policy perspective, we are already seeing federal bipartisan support for permitting reform, which is a unicorn in the energy world, we know, to reduce uncertainty and shorten timelines while maintaining environmental safeguards. Federal agencies are increasingly prioritizing geothermal as firm, clean power essential to grid reliability, industrial growth, and long-term energy security. Just last month, the Department of Energy and the Geothermal Technologies Office announced the Geothermal Accelerator Program with 14 states in partnership with the state energy offices, and Nevada is one of them and is seen as a leader in the geothermal space. Geothermal's long-standing geothermal framework already aligns with these federal priorities and has supported responsible development for decades. Leasing momentum. We've already heard a little bit about Nevada. Nevada consistently leads the nation in federal geothermal leasing because of its high-quality resources, strong developer interest, and a robust system that supports the leasing nomination process. We are seeing this momentum in other states as well. Recent BLM lease sales in Utah, Idaho, and California show rising acreage, increased participation, and higher total receipts returned to counties and the state. In 2025 alone, we saw these states bring in over $23 million. Lease activity is an early signal. Companies invest before drilling begins, and that investment depends on predictable permitting. Oops. Technology momentum. Modern geothermal looks very different from projects 20, 30 years ago. Traditional hydrothermal continues to advance with better reservoir management, improved drilling techniques, and enhanced reinjection practices that sustain productivity. This is a symbiotic relationship. It is to the benefit of operators to maintain this resource appropriately. Next generation technologies are expanding geothermal into new geologic settings, and many of these advances draw from oil and gas expertise, improving precision and lowering risk. Investment. Hundreds of millions of dollars in private capital have flowed into the geothermal development and technology companies in the past few years. Investors are choosing geothermal for firm, long-duration power and domestic energy security, but they invest only where permitting is clear and predictable. Adding unnecessary or duplicative permits increases financial risk and can shift development to other states. Nevada doesn't need to slow geothermal down to manage it responsibly. The state can protect its lands, support communities, and grow its leadership by building on the strong permitting foundation already in place, not by adding new barriers that threaten momentum. Unintended consequences is the heart of our concern here. Additional delays in permits would mean reduced state and county revenue from electricity generation and lease sales, slowing job growth in rural communities, a less diverse and less resilient energy portfolio for Nevada, and an increase in administrative backlog, as agencies already managing robust geothermal processes must incorporate a second review track without the staff and resources to do so. All of this could have a chilling effect on investment, particularly in the early stage exploration, where predictability is critical. And importantly, these added reviews and permits do not solve a new or identified problem within geothermal. Nevada already has the tools and decades of experience to protect water resources while permitting geothermal responsibly. We strongly support Nevada's commitment to safeguarding its water, but we do not believe AB 109 in its current form advances that goal. Instead, it risks undermining one of Nevada's greatest clean energy strengths. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anybody else presenting? Yes. Great. Okay. Whoever's next.
Good almost afternoon, everybody. Ryan Libby, Chief Geologist with ORMAT, RYAN-LIBBEY. So following on from Carrie's talk, I'll provide some additional context for the geology and development strategies of geothermal resources, hopefully providing some more context for the framework around the discussions of AB 109. So to start, here's some context on ORMAT. We are among the two top largest developers of geothermal in the world. We've been in the game for 60 years with 1.1 gigawatts of installed capacity across the globe. That's in seven different countries. And we operate 30 different geothermal fields. Some of those geothermal fields have multiple power plants on them. And so that makes us the largest portfolio of any geothermal developer on the planet. So a lot of different perspectives from different geologic contexts. And we generate 34% currently of all the geothermal power that's in the United States. That's across 6 different states, but Nevada, our home base is where we have 505 currently megawatts of installed geothermal capacity. And just for context, one megawatt is about 1,000 U.S. household in terms of electrical consumption. So ORMAT is a vertically integrated company. So we have all the in-house capabilities to do everything from the exploration, drilling, reservoir engineering, plant design, operation, and of course the business development. And I bring this up not as, I know this isn't a sales pitch, but it's just to give a context that we do have a unique perspective in that sense of thinking very holistically about how we apply development strategies to our resources, because we see things from their infancy. So here's a schematic of how our power plants work. Geothermal fluid at temperatures of 250 to 400 degrees F typically flows up production wells to our heat exchangers. The heat flashes a secondary working fluid with a lower flash point temperature than water. And that working fluid is then utilized to spin a turbine and generate electricity before it is returned or recondensed through our air-cooled condensers. These are 2 closed cycles. The geothermal fluid doesn't come into direct contact with the working fluid, and essentially 100% of the geothermal fluid is injected back into the subsurface. Sometimes we'll take a chemical sample here, a chemical sample there, but essentially 100% of it is reinjected at the vast majority of our plants. So on the right on the slide is a simplified schematic of a geothermal system common to the basin and range in Nevada. These systems naturally advect fluids along permeable fault zones, creating what we call upflow and outflow geometries that are depicted in the graph. And in a geothermal development, we're most commonly setting cemented casing to 1,000 to 3,000 feet. and targeting wells into these upflow zones. It's important to consider that in a typical undeveloped basin and range system, fluid is naturally advecting at rates of anywhere from less than 100 gallons per minute to, at the very high end, maybe upwards of 1,000 gallons per minute in the extreme upper end. That's just the natural advection that's happening as part of these convective cycles. Water's rising, it's getting heated, it's rising along permeable fault zones. So those numbers again are 100 on kind of the average end to 1,000 maximum. A geothermal development that uses production wells and injection wells is moving fluids at volumes that are 2 to 3 orders of magnitude more than that in a typical development, sometimes even more. So what this looks like is on the order of 10,000 gallons per minute for a typical 15 megawatt, 30 megawatt project with a 300F resource temperature. So that's a lot of fluid. So the point emphasizes that re-injecting the volumes that we extract back into the subsurface is imperative to provide the pressure support and sustainable development of our operations. We couldn't do it without it. Wabuska it was an example that's brought up earlier. We can talk about more, but it's a very small operation of a megawatt or so. So it drives home the point. Without re-injection, this doesn't work. So the 100% re-injection of WRMAP plants contrasts with older plant designs that use evaporative cooling towers. And in the last few decades, this is just one of the approaches that has changed to geothermal development. We've also come a long way in the understanding of the geological and reservoir engineering aspects of these resources. And as a result, we're collecting more robust monitoring data sets, and we can talk about what those are if anybody has any specific questions. But we are able to be more intentional about where we produce and where we inject. And we're able to utilize numerical models to calibrate our understanding of the resource and make forecasts and predictions of how the resource will respond to production. So geothermal systems come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and a key part of our job, especially my job as a geologist, is to try to understand the geometry and temperature distribution of the subsurface within and around these systems. So there are some these are some temperature cross sections through some of the geothermal systems in the basin and range and elsewhere around the world, all at the same scale. It's probably hard to read. Hopefully, I was hoping that screens would be a bit bigger, but what we see, especially in the Great Basin, is that the temperatures at or near the water table around these resources are commonly hot, perhaps not surprisingly, sometimes at the boiling point, and without the presence of overlying potable aquifers. That's not to say that there aren't other types of subsurface waters adjacent to our systems. Again, another complicated and busy diagram here, but the point being that depending on the system, there could be cool groundwaters in the range, there could be high salinity, confined aquifers in the basins, and sometimes small perched aquifers above the regional water table. So as a part of the creation of a geologic, what we call conceptual model of a geothermal resource, part of this involves the understanding of these hydrological end members and the potential thermal, hydraulic, so pressure, or chemical connection that they could potentially have at the margins of our resource. We case deep with our wells and avoid these surrounding hydrological units, as if we didn't, their lower temperature and sometimes their adverse chemistry would be detrimental to our operations and hurt our bottom line. So we also characterize, as part of this conceptual model development for each resource, we characterize the occurrence of surface manifestations, springs, steam vents, et cetera, in the context of the overall hydrological model of a project. And understanding the relationship of these features to the overall hydrology informs strategies surrounding the mitigation of any potential effects on these features. So all of this geologic understanding of the geothermal resource we develop is integrated into numerical models, which are a powerful tool, once again, just for making those forecasts, those predictions to how the reservoir will respond over time with production. So that's the lightning tour of our approach to the understanding of geothermal systems, and now I'll pass it off to Erica for a talk about the permitting process.
Yep, so I think I get to say good afternoon now. Erica Freese for the record, F-R-E-E-S-E. I think if you can go to the next slide. I oversee the environmental permitting at ORMAT, so I get to deal with the federal component, the state component, and the county component that has been asked about a couple of times. So I'll just reiterate a couple things. Rob mentioned it earlier. We're known for having big lease sales and having lots of land under lease. Here's some great examples of how much actual disturbance is used for various facilities. McGinnis is a good example. So our McGinnis facility, we have over 16,000 acres of leases associated with that facility. We've produced 146 megawatts, and there's only 112 acres of disturbance. Obviously, every facility, every field is slightly different, but I'll say we get a lot of bang for our buck. We're small disturbance, so don't let lease size scare you. It sounds big, but disturbance footprint is actually quite small. You can go to the next one. So again, I deal with the permits. I focused here on federal and state permitting, but I can touch on the county permitting as well. So the component that we are quite regulated in all of the things that we do. In Nevada, there's very few projects that don't have a federal component from a geothermal development perspective. We have a lot of projects that also have a private component, just with our railroad lands and et cetera, but most projects are utilizing some portion of a BLM geothermal lease. We go through a NEPA process. They regulate our geothermal leases, our unit agreements, our management of the geothermal reservoir. We work with them on our drilling permits, our construction of our facilities, whether that's power plants, pipelines, well pads, the transmission component. And then when we get down to the state level, there's several agencies that we work with. So first and foremost, you heard from Rob with NDOM. That's really well-driven. So they're ensuring that we have good well integrity, that we're not casing inappropriately where we could be impacting the groundwater aquifer. We also do work with NDWR, so we do have water rights for several facilities. Most of that is associated with operations or our fire water. There's a couple of legacy examples where we are doing reservoir augmentation, but I do want to call out that we do have water rights for those consumptive uses. You can go to the next slide. And then I think the one that I was hoping would also be at the table today here is NDEP. We have air permits for our operational facilities, certainly for construction and surface disturbance. But I think the big one here is the Bureau of Water Pollution Control that runs the underground injection control program. And I highlighted it in bold because they are tasked with preventing degradation to underground sources of drinking water within the state. And if that is the concern of AB 109, there's already an agency tasked with doing that. And we are required to have permits associated with all of our operational facilities because we do inject all of our resource back into the reservoir. So they regulate that injection process to ensure that we're not inadvertently impacting waters of the state. They also oversee the chemical uses that are associated with our facilities as well. What I didn't include in this presentation, and is obviously of interest, is all of the county permitting that are associated with our facilities. So, like a lot of things in Nevada, every county is different. Every county chooses to do it differently. Some currently have renewable energy special use permits. Some are working on them. Some use a regular special use permit process. Washoe County is very different from all of the other states. There's about 5 separate permits that we get just associated with drilling and operation of our facilities in Washoe County. Some of the more rural counties are slightly less cumbersome, but while we may not need a county permit to do our exploratory drilling, I don't know of an instance where we wouldn't need a special use permit or a conditional use permit from the county to build a power plant and do the injection process that everybody's talking about today. I will also add that I think you can see that there's a fairly robust permitting process. We touch a lot of agencies, a lot of counties. There's a federal component. And by and large, all of those permit processes have a public component, whether that's a public comment period, public meetings, or public notifications. So with that, I'll say, thank you for letting us talk to you today. And while Ramon didn't have a presentation, I will let him introduce himself in case you have questions related to the DLE component of this.
Raymond Scoble, SLB, that's Ramonscoble. SLB is an acronym or a company name for Schlumberger. We're a partner with Ormat. We're a 100-year-old energy innovation company. We've been working in geothermal for 30 years and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation and also for the variety of information given. Before we go into the committee questions, I do have one question. It's based upon a statement that was made in the prior presentation. In particular, do you reach out to any of the tribal communities? Because unfortunately, I've seen some of the permits where they simply say, did you talk to somebody? As opposed to, have you had conversations? So in your experience with the permitting, has there been outreach in particular with the tribal communities in Nevada?
Yes, so Erica Fries, I will say yes. So Chairman Wadsworth did make a comment about tribal or government-to-government consultation. That is a government process. So as proponents, we're not part of that process, but in the federal component, right, when you're going through NEPA, working with BLM, there is a government-to-government consultation process that is done for all of those projects, whether that's resource confirmation or full plant development. So that's its own component. I won't speak for the entire industry, although I know many geothermal companies and Ormat. We do try and talk to the tribal communities. We are trying to be better with our engagement and be more involved when they're willing to let us. So I won't say that we do it perfectly, but we're certainly trying.
Raymond Scoble for the record, SLB. With respect to SLB's involvement in a DLE process, demonstration plant in Esmeralda County over the last 5 years, we engaged with the 3 Western Shoshone tribes, going and visiting each tribe on their reservation prior to initiating the project. So that was outside the process that Erica spoke of, which is the government to government. We acknowledged that there was a responsibility as a corporate entity for a personal relationship.
Thank you. And I'm just going to make a really quick statement about that because I appreciate that, the comments with it. I know that last session, if I remember correctly, during the interim, both Assemblymember DeLong and I sat on the Public Lands Commission, and there was a very clear statement that at times with some of the, not necessarily in this industry, maybe in others, that at times the consultation was, we're doing this, do you have any problems? As opposed to, let's sit down and talk about how this could impact your roads, how this could impact your water. So thank you for that information that there are some companies that see it as a responsibility, but is not universally seen that way. Am I hearing that correctly? And I'm not expecting you to say that for everybody. All right, please.
Vanessa Robertson for the record. And I just like to note, this, although this industry, yes, has been around for we've been generating electricity for 100 years, robust in Nevada. We know that there's still work to be done, and geothermal rising as, somewhat of the neutral voice, we want to be a resource to councils, to committee members, to other nonprofits to work together to hear concerns, communicate that. And one thing that Geothermal Rising has done is we've created an Indigenous Geothermal Symposium that precedes our annual geothermal conference, which is the largest geothermal conference in the world. And it is that venue to bring stakeholders, to the table to share these conversations and to really educate both the companies and, just the community of how this works, and that we all know that we can do better and we want to do better. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I also want to put it out there. It is not just this company. There are numerous industries that have had problems with this outreach. So thank you very much for that information. Are there any questions? Seeing none, you guys are off the hook, unless you want some questions. We can make some things up. Thank you very much for your presentation today. All right, so this concludes our, basically we've arrived at the last item on our agenda. We made it before the 12:30 deadline for lunch. It's our second period of public comment. Again, to call in, please dial 888-475-4499. And when prompted, please enter meeting ID 881-1761-9045, and then press the pound key. When prompted to a participant ID, please press pound again. Please remember to clearly state and spell your name before you begin. We'll start again in Carson City. If anyone would like to give public comment, please come to the table at this time. You are on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Olivia Tanager, for the record. That's OLIVIATANAGER. I'm the Executive Director of the Sierra Club Toyabe chapter, the largest grassroots environmental organization in the state of Nevada. I just want to be really clear about what we're talking about when we talk about AB 109. My organization was in strong support of that bill last session. We're talking about one filing per geothermal project to ensure no other water rights come into conflict. This is hardly the red tape the industry is making it seem, and is plainly and simply about water fairness. We do want to increase renewable energy in the state. That is obviously the purview of my organization and something we have been longtime advocates of. So certainly we don't want to hinder renewable energy coming online, but we do want to make sure that everybody is following the same rules and that waters of the state are protected. If hydropower, as we heard today, has to get a permit, it makes sense to me that geothermal should also have to get a permit. Briefly to the tribal consultation piece, just so folks are aware, there is current litigation from the Fallon Paiute Shoshone tribe against ORMAT. I won't speak for the tribe on that matter, but it seems clear to me that there's ample room for growth with tribal engagement and consultation with these industries that are coming to our state. In the instance of the Dixie Meadows geothermal project, which is the basis for the lawsuit, 5 independent hydrologists said Dixie Meadows hot springs would dry up, which again is part of the lawsuit. And just so folks know, and I know I've talked to, I think, most of you about this topic, but data centers certainly are a topic of conversation that's happening in Nevada right now. And our load growth that is projected, recent forecasts from NV Energy about the load growth associated with data centers is exponential. And I can provide graphs, and NV Energy has publicly available graphs to that effect too, but because of the load growth and how much energy we're going to have to generate in the state to meet the load growth associated with data centers, it's my strong perspective that we need to button up all of these loopholes and make sure that we are able to get renewables online quickly, so we're not having to power all of these data centers with solely gas. And so buttoning up, closing up these loopholes to make sure that no water rights come into conflict going forward certainly would be in the best interest of the state and of the people who live here. Thank you.
Any further public comment here in Carson City? Seeing no one rushing to the table, I believe last number I heard was there was 5 people. Oh, never mind, they must all be playing Monopoly. But if there's anybody in Vegas that would like to, in Clark County, who would like to make public comment, seeing none, AVH, is there anyone that would like to make public comment by phone?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller, you are unmuted and may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Bevan Lister. I'm the president of Nevada Farm Bureau. You will be most likely associated with Doug Busselman, our executive. I believe he's there in the meeting today. I just wanted to introduce myself. Doug is our executive and lobbyist. I'm just the elected president. But so that you know a little bit about me, I grow alfalfa hay on 1,000 acres in 3 locations across 300 miles in eastern central Nevada. Agriculture hasn't been on your agenda today, but we assume it will be in the future. So I just introduced myself, and I'm sure you've, like I said, met with Doug to offer ourselves as a resource as you go forward in your committee work. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's so nice to meet you by phone. Next caller.
Chair, there are no other callers to give public comment at this time.
Thank you, AVH. So that concludes our meeting for today. Members, I look forward to working with all of you over the next few months. The caller actually opened it up really well. If you have ideas that you would like us to present possibly or have presentations about, please feel free to email the Vice Chair, Cruz Crawford, myself, as well as Ms. Parrott, so that way we can make sure that we can get the presentations going. Our next meeting is Wednesday, February 25th. And I also want to give a little heads up, again, based upon something that was stated in public comment. We will be doing a joint meeting with Growth and Infrastructure in our March meeting, and it will deal with the data centers, because data centers have both a connection to growth and infrastructure and also a connection to water. And so because of that, the interim chair of Growth and Infrastructure and I had a discussion and made a decision to combine those meetings. And this way we could have a more robust conversation as data centers continue to be a part of our news. So thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a wonderful Wednesday. This concludes our meeting.
Thank you, Chair.